on Awakening Day, relying on the most ancient existence. The first S-rank Abyss dungeon appeared on Blue Star. For the past 15 years, the Abyss dungeon had never been conquered. Instead, it had buried countless powerful warriors. But now, Tamin entered the dungeon alone. He fought his way through the strongest god-tier beasts, but just as victory was within reach, he was betrayed by those closest to him. Tamin stopped struggling. Hand over the divine artifact. Slaying the gods means your fate is sealed. Surrender now. You are a hero of humanity. We will make sure you receive a proper end. They relentlessly demanded to know where Tamin had hidden the divine artifact, but he was not one to submit so easily. Those scoundrels had exploited the moment he cleared the dungeon to lie in ambush, all for the divine artifact. And everything had been arranged by Truong Duong, once Tamin's closest teammate. Faced with Tamin's questioning, he showed no shame. Instead, he spoke as though bestowing a favor. Hand over the divine artifact, Tamin. For old time's sake, I won't take your life. I'll merely cripple all your power. Tamin gave a bitter laugh. He truly must have been blind. Otherwise, he would never have regarded Truong Duong as a brother from the age of 18, fighting side by side with him for so long. He had never expected him to be so sinister and vicious, turning against him over a single divine artifact. Fine, if you came only for the divine artifact, then come and take it if you want to witness the power of the inverse Tao divine realm. But I'm afraid none of you have what it takes. The instant Tamin finished speaking, the group sensed a powerful surge of energy. It truly was power that only a divine artifact could possess. They became even more eager to kill him at once and search his body for the artifact. However, Truong Duong signaled for them to stop. He feared that Tamin still wielded the divine artifact's power. If they rushed in recklessly, he might blast them away. Truong Duong's plan still lacked one final piece, Human, and at the mention of her, she appeared. While Tamin was like a hedgehog with its quills raised against his enemies, Human descended from nowhere like a naked fairy and threw her arms around him. I heard someone was trying to harm you, Tamin. I was so worried. It's all right. I obtained the inverse Tao, divine realm, divine artifact. They're no match for me. Still unaware of the truth, Tamin did his best to reassure her before asking, but I still have doubts. How did they know my whereabouts? It was me. Human's voice sounded close beside him, full of satisfaction. At the same moment, Tamin felt a piercing pain in his heart. He had been ambushed by his own girlfriend. Truong Duong burst into laughter at that moment, repeatedly saying, "Good, good." His final scheme had finally succeeded. Human had been his final move. Once her sneak attack succeeded, the scoundrels activated a sealing formation. Tamin's entire body trembled. Perhaps he still could not accept the shock of what had just happened. On top of that, the sealing formation had taken effect, and he could no longer use his power. Human returned to Truong Duong's side. As though afraid her actions had not hurt Tamin enough, she added, "To tell you the truth, I only agreed to be with you because of Truong Duong. When you awakened a 9-star talent back then, we decided to use you to obtain the divine artifact." Bastards! Tamin roared in furious agony with all his strength. But he was now like a fish on the chopping block. Other than unbearable pain and rage, there was nothing else he could do. Just as the group rushed forward to finish Tamin off, another girl appeared. This time, she stood in front of him to shield him. Tamin was just as shocked to see her as he had been when Human appeared. "Why are you here, Kui Jiao?" "Tamin, don't give up. We cannot let these contemptible villains take the divine artifact." Kui Jiao, the summoner, was one of Tamin's closest teammates. She held firm principles and had never betrayed him. Yet what she was doing now was no different from seeking death. Truong Duong had gathered dozens of experts, while Tamin's power had been completely sealed. Today, even if an emperor descended from heaven, it would be difficult to save his life. Amid the chaos, the summoned spirit beasts Kui Jiao called forth continued fighting without pause. Seeing her resist so stubbornly, Truong Duong was forced to act personally. Unable to move, Tamin could only watch from behind and warn Kui Jiao, "Watch your right side." But by the time he spoke, it was already too late. Truong Duong's weapon carved a fatal wound into Kui Jiao's right side. "Saw thee, Kulatma Gui Zhao. Though he apologized, his voice held not the slightest trace of remorse. Seeing her collapse, Tamin's heart ached even more. But in his current state, worrying about someone else would only waste what little strength he had left. Truong Duong then came to settle things with Tamin himself. It was the same old demand: hand over the divine artifact if he wanted to keep his crippled life. You truly are a pack of animals. Tamin clenched his teeth and let out a terrifying roar, unleashing every last bit of power through a god-tier attack called Explosive Fury. Its destructive force was immense. It fully deserved the title of a god-tier attack. Tamin broke free of his restraints. He hurried over and embraced Kui Jiao. Kui Jiao, why did you come? I failed you so many times. His voice trembled uncontrollably. Kui Jiao had only one breath left. She raised a hand to touch Tamin's face, then said, Tamin, if we die, then we die together. The darkness in Kui Jiao's eyes would haunt Tamin forever. He lifted her into his arms and swore a venomous oath before those beasts. I, Tamin, swear here and now, if I ever return to this world, I will tear every one of you into 1,000 pieces. Hioman, Jung Jung, remember this. His icy gaze made Hugh Man break out in goosebumps, while Truong Duong sensed that something was wrong. Tamin intended to enter the Abyss dungeon with the divine artifact. Truong Duong immediately panicked and ordered everyone to stop him and seize the divine artifact. But it was too late. Tamin and Kui Jiao were already being drawn into the Abyss dungeon. You want the divine artifact? Then come take it, he said calmly, opening his palm to reveal an exquisite ring radiating brilliant golden light. Though he said that, Tamin had already resigned himself to dying there. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly regained consciousness. In his blurred, disordered vision, a ray of light appeared at the end of the pitch-black tunnel. The light grew brighter and brighter, causing him to instinctively reach out and grasp for it. When his vision finally cleared, Tamin realized that he was no longer in the Abyss dungeon. He looked around and saw countless people, then heard a majestic announcement from the stage ahead. The 127th Awakening Ceremony of First Academy of Xianjing. Student Vong Quang has successfully awakened as a support class spellforger with a 3-star innate talent. As soon as the announcement ended, countless murmurs arose below the stage. At today's awakening ceremony, most people failed to awaken combat classes. Why worry? A spellforger is still a useful support class. His status won't be low in the future. Our school's luck this year is a little poor. An awakening ceremony? Tamin thought he had misheard. Yet the scene before him and the sensation he felt were far too familiar. It seemed he had returned to the day of his awakening ceremony at 18 years old. That fat boy on stage, Vong Quang, had indeed awakened as a spellforger in his previous life. If he remembered correctly, the next awakenings would be Lai Tung Duong, who successfully awakened as a warrior with a 2-star innate talent, Tian Vu, who failed to awaken, and Tong Luke, who successfully awakened as a combat mage. Reality proved Tamin's guess correct. Lai Tung Duong was called next and truly became a warrior with a 2-star innate talent. Then came Tian Vu, who burst into miserable tears after failing to awaken. Tong Luke became a mage amid everyone's cheers. Everything was so real that Tamin was certain it was not a dream. The emotions suppressed within him surged, ready to erupt. He truly had been reincarnated. The most tragic memories of his previous life immediately flooded back. He did not know why, but was this second chance not a gift from heaven, given to let him make up for every past regret? Since that was the case, he had to seize it tightly. Just then, it was Truong Duong's turn to awaken. At that time, he had been the most outstanding figure at the ceremony, having unlocked a hidden combat class. A demon channeling warrior with an 8-star innate talent. It was the first hidden class to appear, and the students below could not contain their excitement. As expected of the young master of the Truong family, his father is a battle emperor, and his mother is a demon warrior. His bloodline was already incredibly pure. The crowd continuously praised Truong Duong, who wore a smug smile on stage. Only Tamin looked at him differently from everyone else, his eyes filled with bone-deep hatred. To encounter an old enemy the moment he was reincarnated, what a twisted fate. So you're here. Suddenly, a hand reached out and lightly touched Tamin's back. He turned around and saw a face he knew all too well. Tamin, I've been looking everywhere for you. Tamin stared at Kui Jiao with wide eyes, as if he wanted to see through her completely. His stare made Kui Jiao uncomfortable. Why are you staring blankly at me? Is there something on my face? No, no. Tamin quickly composed himself and said, I just wanted to congratulate you in advance. Kui Jiao. Huh? Why are you congratulating me? She became even more puzzled. Memories spun through Tamin's mind like a lantern carousel. He could never forget that Kui Jiao had died for him in his previous life. Seeing her again now filled him with a joy so intense that it did not feel real. It's nothing. You'll understand when you go up there. Tamin replied mysteriously. Before long, it was Kui Jiao's turn to awaken. Following the instructions, she stepped onto the stage and placed her hand upon the heavenly steel. It was only a light touch, yet a heavenly phenomenon appeared in the sky, proving that the class she had awakened was anything but ordinary, no less remarkable than Truong Duong's. The audience erupted once more. Kui Jiao had also awakened a hidden class, a combat-type summoner with a 7-star innate talent. The students grew noisy again. Just moments ago, they had said their school's luck was bad this year. Now, 2 hidden classes had appeared in succession. It seemed they would have to take back those words. This was entirely within Tamin's expectations. Then, if you remember correctly, he would be next. Kui Jiao came down happily and wished him good luck. When Tamin's turn came, the students were not as enthusiastic. He was merely an orphan at the school, completely unremarkable. In this world ruled by awakened ones, ever since Awakening Day arrived in the Dragon Kingdom 15 years ago, everyone who reached the age of 18 could undergo their class awakening and officially become an awakened one. These awakened ones were the people capable of changing the face of the world. Not only could they wield power capable of overturning laws and fate, but they could also obtain abundant equipment and wealth. Yet in exchange, they had to face savage, giant beasts, terrifying dungeons, and countless other trials. In his previous life, Tamin had been an orphan who survived on aid and scholarships. But at his awakening ceremony at 18, heaven had granted him a lucky opportunity. Just as now, the moment he touched the heavenly steel, a series of heavenly phenomena descended. In the end, Tamin awakened the legendary class known as God Slayer, with an innate talent reaching 9 stars, surpassing both Kui Jiao and Truong Duong. The events of his previous life unfolded again today. As the heavenly phenomena began to descend, both the principal and students held their breath in anticipation. Kui Jiao was also especially nervous and expectant. If their school produced 3 hidden classes in a row, it would truly be unprecedented. Gulme, let me feel the energy waves of these runes once again, Tamin thought. But at that very moment, he sensed something unusual within the energy waves. A flash of golden light appeared. It was the inverse Tao, divine realm divine artifact he had risked his life to protect in his previous life. He never expected it to travel through time with him. In an instant, that golden light transformed into a status window. Having reincarnated, Tamin had gained a system as well. A crucial notification appeared on the window. The strongest god-slaying system has successfully linked. The system has assigned you a brand new class. Awakening successful, mythical class, Sword God. Tamin was stunned by this unexpected change. Rather than awakening as the god slayer of his previous life, he had become a sword god in this life. Seeing that the heavenly phenomenon had yet to end, even the principal became too anxious to remain seated, while the whispers below grew louder. No way. If he awakens a combat class, that would be incredible. But if it's a support class, that would be terrible. Are you stupid? With such an extraordinary phenomenon, how could it possibly be a support class? Truong Duong heard every word of their discussion. An inexplicable unease rose in his heart, and his eyes remained fixed on Tamin standing on the stage. He wondered why Tamin was standing there motionless. Tamin himself was somewhat overwhelmed. Everyone else had awakened exactly as they had in his previous life, but his path had changed completely. Moreover, he still could not adapt to the golden system interface before him. Tamin reached out and touched the status window, and the system immediately recognized him. It successfully identified his fingerprint and bound itself to its host, Tamin. The class he awakened was no longer God Slayer, but Sword God. Tamin's talent was called Ascension of All Things, a golden gray talent. In other words, Sword God was a class even higher than the 9-star level he had awakened in his previous life. After a few seconds of confusion, a smug smile appeared on his face. He had feared that his new talent would be worse than before, but he had drawn something even stronger. What was there to worry about? He operated the system. He opened his skill interface. Although he had awakened a class, he had not obtained a single skill. Tamin instantly panicked and wildly tapped at the system. You gotta be kidding. At least give me one skill. How else can I live up to my golden grade talent? No one else could see Tamin's system, so they had no idea what he was doing on stage. Many people began urging him impatiently, but Tamin had no mood to pay attention to them. If he awakened but possessed no abilities at all, how was he any different from someone who had not awakened? Was this system playing a joke on him? Feedback received. Continue following the guidance. The contents of the status window changed again. This time, it required Tamin to confirm a ring. The only ring he possessed was the divine artifact that had returned with him from his previous life. Tamin took it out, and the notification changed again, stating that the inverse Tao divine ring had been successfully identified. A blinding beam of golden light suddenly descended from the sky. The tremendous commotion startled everyone. A perfect number 10 appeared, plunging the entire venue into chaos. Tamin had successfully awakened as the hidden class Royal Swordmaster with a 10-star talent. To everyone else, this achievement was monstrously heaven-defying. A 10-star Royal Swordmaster talent, the talent of a top scholar. Even Truong Duong's 8-star Demon Channeling Warrior was instantly eclipsed. The school leadership was overjoyed, having produced 3 outstanding talents in a row. The most remarkable was naturally Tamin. Although Royal Swordmaster was not the most outstanding class among sword classes, his innate 10-star talent was simply off the charts. They all believed that Tamin possessed limitless potential in the future. The academy principal was so excited that he immediately awarded him a cultivation support item. As Tamin left the stage, he heard quite a few people discussing him on his way back. So he's actually a Royal Swordmaster? What a waste of such amazing innate talent. Royal Swordmaster is a sword class profession, but it's the weakest of them all. Swordsmen are originally melee classes, yet Royal Swordmasters fight both up close and at range. They have to invest in both physical and magical attacks. Although they can attack from afar, it spreads their training resources thin and weakens their melee combat ability. In the end, their combat power is only average. It's clearly a weak class. Among those comments, Tamin could hear no shortage of malice. These people were clearly delighted that, despite his exceptional talent, he had awakened such a weak class. They seemed eager to see him fail because Royal Swordmasters had to put in twice as much effort as others to earn the same amount of training progress. They believed that it was uncertain whether Tamin could even clear the novice dungeon, let alone become a peerless genius. Just then, a beautiful figure ran through the crowd toward him. Who else could it be but Kui Jiao? Unlike those people who kicked someone when they were down, she wore a sincere smile. "Congratulations, Tamin," she said brightly. "They're just talking nonsense. Awakening a 10-star talent means you're truly exceptional. Although the Royal Swordmaster class may be a little weaker in the early stages, I believe that with your talent, it won't be a problem at all. Hangzhou, Guizhou, but I don't care about what they say. On the contrary, their reaction suits me just fine," Tamin replied. His attitude left Kui Jiao completely confused. Next came Hugh Man's turn to awaken. She was naturally beautiful. At that moment, she had already attracted the attention of many male students. Even Truong Duong was no exception. Hugh Man really is popular. As expected of our school's beauty queen, Kui Jiao praised. Yet Tamin showed no interest whatsoever. He did not even spare that woman a glance and simply walked away. Although the class awakening ceremony was not over yet, he had lost all interest in staying, especially after hearing Hugh Man's name. In his previous life, she had exploited his 9-star talent and ultimately betrayed him without hesitation. Tamin had sworn that he would avenge that betrayal. Therefore, Hugh Man would not escape either. He left the academy and entered a bustling street. It had been a long time since he had seen this sight, and he could not help feeling nostalgic. Everything in Tamin's life this time around seemed unchanged, apart from the class he had just awakened. After checking his ring, he confirmed that he had obtained his first skill, Total Concealment. The effect of this legendary skill was to conceal or alter information concerning his equipment, class, and skills. It was one of the 4 skills Tamin had brought back from his previous life. Thanks to that divine artifact, he had inherited part of his new class's abilities. The other 3 skills were Godslayer's Strike, Hidden God Steps, and the Eye of Insight. As mentioned before, Tamin's class was Sword God, a unique mythic grade class unlike any other in the world. However, he used total concealment to alter it into that of an ordinary royal sword master. An innocent man becomes guilty simply by possessing jade. To avoid repeating the tragedy of his previous life, being exploited because his class was too eye-catching, and because he was still not strong enough, he could not hide his 10-star talent, so he would have to hide his hidden class instead. He had to make the most of this second chance at life. Based on his experience from his previous life, the day after the awakening ceremony ended, he would face his first trial, the Novice Dungeon. Tamin did not consider the Novice Dungeon much of a challenge. To level up faster and obtain better equipment, he needed to challenge its toughest boss. But for that to go smoothly, he first needed a good weapon. Meanwhile, at a hotel in the city center, after the class awakening ceremony, Truong Duong and Hugh Man were passionately making love. "You're so naughty, Truong Duong. The awakening ceremony only ended this morning, and you already wanted to bring me here," Hugh Man said coquettishly as she lay in his arms. "Don't mention the ceremony. That bastard Amin stole all my spotlight. It's infuriating," Truong Duong said angrily. "Don't be mad. Although Tamin is only a royal sword master, his awakened talent rating is incredibly high. He'll definitely be valuable to exploit in the future." A wicked expression appeared on her face. Hugh Man then volunteered to seduce Tamin, confidently claiming that he would certainly take the bait. When that happened, the two of them could manipulate him as they pleased. They had no idea that Tamin had already lived through one lifetime. He was no longer so easy to deceive. He had become a true career-focused man. Right now, he was shopping for weapons. Besides him, quite a few students who had just awakened had come here as well. It seemed that they were all preparing for the upcoming Novice Dungeon trial. Every type of weapon was available here, including the latest models, though none of them were cheap. Tamin saw a crowd gathered around a sword called the Heavenly Frost Sword. It was the newest greatsword designed by a high-level class user, and it had unexpectedly already reached the market. As long as this sword struck its target, it could completely freeze the blood inside a monster's body. It was a diamond-grade weapon, but it cost as much as 1 million yuan. Tamin did not even glance at the Heavenly Frost Sword, because he knew it was counterfeit. In his previous life, those merchants selling fake goods had all been arrested. "Wait, are you Tamin?" A bespectacled woman suddenly appeared. Tamin had absolutely no recollection of her face. Seeing his puzzled look, she took out a business card and introduced herself. "My name is Zhang Lam, Deputy Director of the Zhang Han Financial Group." Tamin nodded, but still stated that he did not know her. To his surprise, Zhang Lam suddenly declared, "Tamin, the Zhang Han Financial Group will cover all your expenses here today. I only hope you can do me a favor." There was no such thing as a free lunch. When Tamin asked what favor she wanted, Zhang Lam's assistant handed him a photograph. It showed a younger girl who bore some resemblance to her. "Zhang Lam et lai, DCS Zhang Van Tang." "She attends the same school as you and successfully awakened this morning as well. I investigated and learned that you awakened a 10-star talent. With your abilities, tomorrow's Novice Dungeon should not be difficult for you." Both of them understood that only first-time awakened class users could enter the Novice Dungeon. Therefore, Zhang Lam wanted to find someone suitable to form a party with Van Tan and protect her through this trial. Naturally, Tamin was the most suitable person for that role in Zhang Lam's eyes. Unexpectedly, after hearing her out, he refused without even thinking about it. "I'm not interested." Zhang Lam let out a startled sound, then repeated her offer. "As long as you agree, you may choose any weapon you want from this store. As a poor student who has just awakened, you shouldn't refuse me." Why did she have to emphasize the word poor? Tamin was annoyed and pointed at the Heavenly Frost Sword, saying that he wanted that one. But that sword cost 1 million yuan. To everyone watching, it seemed that he was exploiting Zhang Lam's offer to demand something excessive. An awkward expression appeared on her face. "Why you're making things difficult for me? With your current status, do you really think you're worth 1 million yuan? Didn't you say I could choose whatever I wanted? If you don't want to, then forget it. Many things cannot be shortcut with money alone. Tell your little sister to put all her effort into preparing for tomorrow's Novice Dungeon trial." Zhang Lam gave a cold laugh. You're quite interesting to Min. Consider this incident our offense. Let's go. With that, she turned and left. The onlookers could not help holding their breath. They had not expected Min, who had only just awakened, to dare offend someone from the Zhonghan Financial Group, especially its deputy director. Min, however, could not care less. At that moment, his phone vibrated with a new message. He wondered who had sent it, but when he opened it, he saw 3 words: Human. Min, haven't you always liked me? I've changed my mind. I want to see you tonight. Meet me on the rooftop of the academic building. Min truly wanted to laugh. Even the message was exactly the same as in his previous life. Even though he was now just an ordinary royal sword master, she still had her eye on his 10-star talent. Human truly had not changed at all. In his previous life, it was at this very time that he had fallen into her trap of love. But not in this life. Fine, I'll be there, he immediately replied. But first, he needed to settle the matter of his weapon. He walked to a corner of the store piled with long, narrow stones. In truth, they were sword stones, swords encased in stone, like a kind of blind box. These weapon blanks had a chance of yielding silver-grade weapons, but most only produced the lowest-grade weapons. The sales clerk therefore advised him to think carefully before choosing one. Min, however, said that this was exactly what he needed. Rather than spending an enormous sum on a silver-grade weapon that would soon be replaced, it made much more sense to take a low-cost gamble here. But it was not really a gamble, because while others did not know, Min could see the data within these stone blanks and tell which ones contained something useful. It was all thanks to the second skill Godslayer had left him from his previous life, the Eye of Insight. This was another legendary grade skill, granting him eyes capable of seeing through the essence of things and viewing the origin information of all matter. Among a pile of useless stones, Min found what he needed. While ordinary silver-grade weapons sold for more than 1 million yuan, he only needed to spend 50 yuan to obtain this one. It was an incredible bargain. Now that Min had returned to being a poor student, this investment was far too worthwhile. Seeing Min buy sword stones, several people could not suppress their curiosity and turned their eyes toward him. Isn't that the kid who just rejected the Zhonghan Financial Group's offer? What is he holding? Isn't that one of those trash stone blanks that almost never produce weapons? I thought the kid was something special. He dared refuse an invitation from a financial giant just to come here and play with these garbage stone blanks. Is he an idiot? Min's side, he recognized the man. In his previous life, he had been the rich young master Duong Din, who specialized in bullying younger students. Beside him stood his best friend and most capable lackey. Running into them here was truly troublesome. Suddenly, Min had an idea to make money. How about a bet? Do you dare wager 5,000 daxia coins that I can open a silver-grade weapon? Duong Din and his friends stared at each other blankly for 2 or 3 seconds, then burst in a loud laughter, mocking Min for being an idiot. Everyone knew that weapon stone blanks had a 99.99% chance of yielding junk. Hitting the remaining 0.01% was harder than reaching the heavens. Certain that Min would be handing them money, Duong Din immediately agreed. Fine, but when I open it, don't even think about refusing to pay if you lose, Min said loudly. He wanted as many people as possible to gather around, so Duong Din's group would have no choice but to pay up. The stone blank was then activated and opened. Relying on the Eye of Insight, Min was extremely confident. He had already seen the weapon he wanted inside the sword stone. Come out. As soon as Min spoke, the outer stone shattered into pieces. Duong Din and his companions immediately went pale. The surrounding people could not help gaping in amazement. Min had actually opened a silver-grade, low-tier dark steel Bloodwind sword. This sword had a special trait. After cutting and wounding a monster, it could absorb the blood on its blade to heal its owner's injuries. What a fine weapon. Holding the sword in his hand, Min thought that it was also perfectly suited for his appointment tonight. Duong Din's group truly could not believe that Min had found a treasure in that pile of trash. Min, meanwhile, was extremely satisfied with the sword. Though it was only low-tier silver grade, it had a lifesteal effect. It could even save healers quite a bit of effort. Min raised the sword's tip close to Duong Din's face. Though he was smiling, His tone was clearly threatening. Habit isabit. I'll gladly accept these 5,000 daxia coins. Faced with Tamin's intimidating expression, Duongdin did not dare withhold the money. He immediately transferred the full amount, though he did not forget to add a threat that carried little weight. Kid, I'll remember you. Don't go making bets with people so easily in the future, or you might lose money for nothing. Tamin laughed in response. The sales clerk who had warned him earlier fell silent upon seeing him open a silver-grade weapon. According to the store's records, no one had opened a weapon from a stone blank in years. Tamin calmly walked up to her and said that he still needed to buy a sword sheath. The sheath cost 5,000 yuan, so he had deliberately lured Duong Din's group into paying for it from the start. Tamin bought a silver-grade sword sheath with the effect of reducing weapon durability loss by 50%. After all, he did not have enough money to replace his sword yet, so the more he could limit its wear and tear, the better. The system then prompted Tamin to unlock the hidden function, weapon manifestation. But he declined because he still needed to upgrade this weapon one more time. On the way back, holding the Darksteel Bloodwind sword in his hand, Tamin could not help reflecting on his previous life. In this life, although he had awakened the Sword God class, he did not yet possess any usable class skills. All 4 skills he currently had were inherited from his previous life. However, his class talent panel definitely contained an immensely powerful innate talent, evolution of all things. Evolution of all things allowed him to upgrade the quality of any loot, including combat skills, equipment, and books. Every item could only be evolved once, whether directly or indirectly. This talent alone was enough to justify the Sword God class's gold grade status. Tamin immediately activated evolution of all things to transform the sword he had just acquired. When it was finished, the weapon had become high-tier silver grade and gained an additional effect called Blood Sap. Its effect was that after killing a monster, the sword would temporarily increase all of its owner's attributes by 5 points. The effect lasted 30 seconds. After defeating an enemy, he could gain a temporary enhancement that boosted all attributes. This was an absolute steal. Only then did Tamin unlock the hidden function, weapon manifestation. With the novice dungeon taking place tomorrow, things seemed like they would be much easier. That evening, he did not forget his appointment with Hugh Man. She arrived first. When she heard footsteps, she deliberately turned her most beautiful side toward him and said seductively, like a temptress, "You finally came. You're late." However, the sight of a greatsword shooting toward her sent Hugh Man into a panic. Her piercing scream rang out, but since they were on the rooftop of the academic building, no one noticed or heard her. Tamin's sword flew over and embedded itself in the ground not far from Hugh Man. She was so frightened that her breathing became rapid and disordered. "What are you doing, Tamin?" she shouted. "I came here for revenge," he replied, but Hugh Man could not understand what he meant. Although she did intend to exploit him, she had not yet done anything excessive in this life. What revenge could he possibly mean? "I was even going to accept your confession." The more Hugh Man thought about it, the angrier she became. She raised her phone, displaying the messages from when Tamin had confessed to her before. "You were the one who confessed to me first, and now you want to hurt me?" Seeing Hugh Man's panicked appearance, Tamin felt a little pleased. Date her? That had been a matter for his previous life. Hugh Man was recognized as the school beauty and had always been a prominent figure at the academy. As for him, an orphan who had never received anyone's attention, he had truly never imagined that he would ever have any connection with Hugh Man. Much less did he expect that, on the second day after the awakening ceremony, she would take the initiative to approach him. From that day onward, Tamin received her affection, the affection he had longed for his entire life. In the end, he confessed to her. Then came dating and intimate acts. Everything happened naturally. Those days had been the time Tamin cherished most. Who could have expected that it had all been lies in the end? "I know all about your shady dealings with Truong Duong," Tamin suddenly roared, as though carrying the resentment of his previous life. "You only wanted to exploit my talent and abilities." Having been struck at her weak point, Hugh Man panicked slightly and tried to conceal her true intentions. Yet because she had a guilty conscience, she still revealed a flaw. "Don't talk nonsense," she replied nervously. "Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you know perfectly well," Tamin sneered. The beautiful, generous Hugh Man of the past had all been an act. Her true face was nothing more than that of a lowly, shameless woman consumed by empty ambition. Hugh Man had never cared about Tamin. Today, she had only lowered herself to approach him because she wanted to use him. Instead, she had been insulted by him so viciously. How could she not be furious? Since things had come to this, Human no longer bothered pretending. She raised her voice and cursed. "What the hell do you know, orphan? If your talent had even the slightest value, you wouldn't even be worthy of speaking to me. How dare you call me a used woman? Truong Duong, and I won't let you get away with this, Tamin." Tamin gave another cold snort and replied without showing her any courtesy, "Do whatever you want. But I think you should worry about yourself first. If the affair between you two cheating dogs gets exposed, it'll do quite a bit of damage to that pure and noble image you've built." Human had repeatedly been struck where it hurt most by Tamin. By now, she had completely lost her composure. As Tamin turned to leave, she pulled the sword embedded in the ground free. Then she charged straight at him. She looked exactly as she had in his previous life, always fond of sneak attacks and stabbing others in the back. Unfortunately, he had already seen it coming. Human's attack was immediately neutralized. Weapon manifestation had already been activated. From the very beginning, she had fallen into the trap Tamin had laid for her. How can your sword turn against its owner? Human was immediately struck hard across the face by it. She fell to the ground, crying and screaming, "My face! My face! You ruined my face, didn't you?" Tamin showed no mercy whatsoever, saying that she had brought all of this upon herself. Now, it was simply time for him to take revenge. "I'll have Truong Duong kill you," Man hissed viciously. Tamin could not be bothered with her, and even provoked her in return. "Oh sure, tell him to come settle the score with me. And remember this, today's sword strike was dealt by me. This strike also ends the relationship between us." With one sword strike, he decisively severed the affection he had cherished most in his previous life. As he left, he received a new message. It was not from the system, but a gift personally sent by the Academy principal. Since Tamin had awakened a 10-star talent, the principal had been exceptionally generous. He received a marrow-strengthening pill, a combat outfit, and 10,000 coins. At 6 the following morning, Tamin woke up and used the marrow-strengthening pill as breakfast. The principal truly had been generous, but Tamin guessed the man pitted him for awakening a 10-star talent while having only the Royal Sword Master class, so he wanted to compensate him a little. "This really isn't suitable for breakfast," Tamin muttered as he chewed the pill. Its effects were immediately absorbed. His constitution increased by 10 points, and he gained 100 experience points, reaching level 2. Normally, awakened ones receive 10 free attribute points upon reaching level 2. Another passive talent, Origin Sword Body, was also activated. Its origin was an innate heart of sword intent. From now on, he could learn all swordsmanship skills while ignoring every prerequisite and restriction. Tamin was extremely satisfied, as expected of his golden 10-star talent. He had learned a new talent at just level 2. Today was the day to challenge the Novice Dungeon, and he was eager to put on a proper show. Tamin headed toward the Novice Dungeon area of mystical capital First Academy. There were already many people gathered there. Contrary to his expectation of being shunned, Tamin was surrounded by students. They all wanted to form a party with him. After all, with his 10-star talent potential and the novice gift package sent by the principal, they believed he could easily clear this dungeon even if he was a Royal Sword Master. "Let's come with you. Our classes can compensate well for a Royal Sword Master's weaknesses. We can use our strengths to make up for his shortcomings, and we can earn more contribution points too." None of their words entered to Min's ears, as if he did not know how much they had looked down on the Royal Sword Master class yesterday. Now, they wanted to team up with him. How practical. He replied, "Sorry, but I already have a party." As soon as he finished speaking, someone not far away nearly toppled over. It was Kui Jiao. "What? You already have a party, Tamin? I came here early in the morning just so I could be the first to team up with you." Disappointment was impossible to hide on her face. Tamin leaned closer and quietly told her that the challenge he wanted was not for ordinary contribution rewards. If Kui Jiao formed a party with him, she might get hurt. In truth, he did not currently have a party. He simply wanted a challenge alone. But he had said that to drive the others away. Before Kui Jiao could respond, someone else came over to greet Tamin. He introduced himself as Neum Trake, a Class 4 student with a 9-star talent who had awakened the Demon Hunting Ranger class. Like the others, Neum Trake wanted to form a party with him. Tamin remembered this young man somewhat, because in his previous life, he had also been a 9-star awakened one like Tamin. Before Tamin could speak, Kui Jiao stepped forward to help him. She said that the two of them had already formed a party and hoped no one else would disturb them. The others gradually left, and Tamin suddenly felt that Kui Jiao was truly a reliable person. It was nearly time for the dungeon to open. Just as Tamin turned to look at the time, he heard the principal's voice. Students, the 127th Novice Dungeon Trial officially begins now. I'm truly sorry, students. I overslept and could not make it to the scene to cheer you on. I can only live stream from home to explain the Novice Dungeon rules. According to him, this Novice Dungeon trial would last one day and was something every newly awakened person had to undergo. Each student had already been registered, and as soon as they entered the dungeon, the teachers could identify their information. Inside, every participant would be scored separately according to the contribution value of the challenges they completed, after which rewards would be distributed. To ensure the best possible survival rate, they were advised to challenge the dungeon in parties. As long as they completed it within a day, they would be considered to have passed the novice trial. Students, your fateful moment has arrived. Are you ready? There is no need to hesitate any longer. The dungeon officially begins. As the principal spoke, Kui Jiao anxiously looked around, only to find that Tamin was nowhere in sight. It turned out that before anyone had even finished preparing, he had already rushed through the dungeon gate. Tamin found this novice dungeon strangely familiar, and it made him feel somewhat nostalgic. In his previous life, he had rushed in recklessly, frightened yet excited, hoping only to earn more contribution points. But in this life, he wanted to choose the hardest challenge, defeating the final hidden boss. Beyond the dungeon gate was Rage-Tide Forest, an S-rank map. This place was completely different from the map Tamin had entered in his previous life. But that was only natural, since the novice dungeon map changed randomly every year. Therefore, every participant had to plan their route differently. All starting points after entering the dungeon's teleportation gate were random, and the monsters they encountered inside were different as well. 2. Min quickly encountered his first monster. It was an elite monster. Though it looked like an immobile tree, once its vines locked onto a target, it would drag them into the blazing hollow atop its trunk and roast them alive. Tamin's ultimate objective was to challenge the hidden boss. It would be best to avoid such troublesome monsters and conserve his strength. The reason he had hurried into the novice dungeon was to scout the route first and find the items needed to challenge the hidden boss. Even if the map changed, the method of defeating the boss remained the same. Once more people entered, it would not be easy to collect them. With that in mind, Tamin immediately set off. It was not until 7:30 a.m. that the other participants began entering through the teleportation gate. A 3-person party had just entered from this side, led by a somewhat timid female student. Seeing that the surroundings were quiet, they felt relieved, thinking this area was relatively safe. Unexpectedly, just as they thought that, they heard hurried footsteps in the distance. A figure came running toward them. Panting heavily, he shouted, "Help!" 2 enormous, bloodthirsty mad rats that looked anything but easy to deal with were chasing him. Seeing this, Lai Dai Chiu, the group leader, ordered the 3 of them to split up and flee in different directions. Yet not long afterward, news came from outside. At 7:31 a.m., 3 participants had been killed by bloodthirsty mad rats. Among them was Lai Dai Chiu, an awakened one with a 6-star talent. The students outside could not help sighing. A 6-star talent, and he still died so quickly. Many people had yet to enter the teleportation gate because they had not managed to form parties, Kui Jiao among them. People have already died before we even entered. This novice dungeon is terrifying. The timid girl from Lai Dai Chiu's party was the only survivor running alone. She did not dare stop or look back. After running for who knew how long, she had completely lost her sense of direction and had no idea what muddy corner she was in. Suddenly, she looked up and spotted a muscular figure and a monkey monster. It had noticed her too and immediately charged to attack. "Save me!" the girl screamed in panic. Apart from that instinctive cry, she had no ability to fight back at all. But the girl was fortunate because someone really did come to save her. Who else could that familiar figure wielding a sword be but Tamin? He moved swiftly and acted decisively, defeating that monkey monster in a single strike. Elsewhere, another student was being attacked by a level 5 bloodthirsty brown bear, an elite monster. He ran while crying miserably, "My luck is terrible. I ran into an elite monster the moment I stepped out of the teleportation gate." Another group was facing marsh hunters, level 2 monsters. Yet even at that level, they were enough to give these novices a difficult time. The party facing level 3 pursuit hounds was no better off. They were already covered in injuries. One student suggested using the communications channel to report that monsters had surrounded the 9 o'clock direction on the map and request reinforcements. Students at the 6 o'clock direction also sent out a request for help, as did those at 11 o'clock. As monsters continued pouring in, a 5-person party in the central area was nearly wiped out. If they had not told the only girl in the party to hide, they would all have died. The dungeon had only been open for half an hour, yet the scene was already so bloody and tragic. Its difficulty far exceeded the novice's imagination. This raised a question: could newly awakened people like them really survive and clear it? Returning to the monkey monster, the girl watched Min defeat the enemy alone and save her life. She could not help muttering, "He's so strong. He took down that monster instantly." Then she spoke louder. "Thank you for saving me. You're Tamin, the one with the 10-star talent, right? I was only passing by." Tamin seriously corrected her. "But I won't be able to save you a second time. That monster hasn't been defeated yet." Hearing that, the girl, who had only just relaxed, turned pale with fear and hurriedly ran away, saying she would go call for reinforcements. Only Tamin remained at the scene. After using the Eye of Insight, Tamin learned that the beast was a level 3 mutant monkey king. Its attributes were 28 strength, 24 constitution, 5 agility, 6 spirit, and 4 luck. The only skill it possessed was smash. So it was a mutant monkey king. No wonder an ordinary monster in an S-rank dungeon map could survive repeated attacks from his silver-grade weapon. Though it had already lost half its health bar, the mutant monkey king was still full of vigor. Once it stood up, it charged at him brutally. Although it had only 5 agility, Tamin still found its speed quite impressive. But that was perfect. He could use it to test his abilities. Of the 4 skills Tamin had inherited from his previous life, it was now time to use the third one: Hidden God Steps. This skill increased his movement speed by 50%. Upon activation, he immediately became immune to all physical, magical, and mental attacks, and could not be targeted. However, it consumed a large amount of stamina while active. In an instant, Tamin's speed soared. This time, he was the one to take the initiative and attack the mutant monkey king. It seemed to sense Tamin's sudden increase in power and became even more vicious. Yet from now on, every one of its attacks was meaningless against him. As the monkey slammed a blow straight toward Tamin, he had already appeared behind it without warning. Hearing the movement of its enemy, the monkey viciously turned around. But at Tamin's current speed, its movements were no different from those of a clumsy, roly-poly toy. Tamin felt there was no need to continue fighting. This battle was far too boring. Thus, the final image the mutant monkey king saw was Tamin charging at it with a greatsword in hand. You have successfully defeated the mutant monkey king. You have received a low bronze grade skill scroll, single line slash. Though its grade was rather low, it was still quite useful in this novice dungeon. In addition, Tamin received another title, First Blood, for being the first person to defeat the mutant monkey king in Rage-Tide Forest. He was not the only one to receive this notification. Since it was a dungeon achievement, every other student received it as well. Thanks to Tamin, all players received a small health potion. This was a life-saving straw for many students, as their health bars were nearly empty. The notification did not name the person who had defeated the mutant monkey king. It only said it was a royal sword master, so everyone immediately assumed it was Tamin. Although the combined number of royal sword masters in this city and several nearby cities was nearly 10 this year, he was surely the one with the highest talent. Whether it was Tamin or not, someone had completed the first kill. That meant newly awakened people like them still had enough strength to clear this dungeon. The students' morale immediately surged, but to Tamin, this was a major problem. He had forgotten that the dungeon title system could expose his strength. It seemed that in the future, he could only be more careful and use total concealment to alter and hide any information that was unfavorable to him. Still, he had not expected that the dungeon had been open for half an hour and no one had killed even a single monster, forcing him to take the title of First Blood. Just as Tamin was about to leave, he heard growling. He looked through the bushes and saw 3 level 3 hungry wolves. These monsters were perfect for testing his new swordsmanship attack skill. A moment ago, Tamin had used Evolution of All Things to upgrade the low bronze grade single line slash skill scroll dropped by the mutant monkey king. After evolving, it had become a new low silver grade skill called Draw Sword Slash. Encountering these 3 wolves now was perfect. He could immediately test the skill's effects. The system notification appeared. You have slain a hungry wolf. Experience plus 80. You have slain a hungry wolf. Experience plus 800. You have slain 10 hungry wolves. Experience plus 8,000. At that moment, the clock struck 9:30 a.m. System notification. Congratulations, you have reached level 9. You have received the title Hungry Wolf Legend. Tamin was extremely satisfied. Draw Sword Slash, with its ranged attack property, was far more effective against these low-level hungry wolves, drawing the sword from its sheath through the sore body. The energy generated would accumulate over a certain period of time. After locking onto the target, his next move followed immediately. A slash flew toward the pack of wolves. It was a long-range attack that did not require close combat, instantly killing a wolf. After all the smaller hungry wolves had been slain, a new and far more powerful presence appeared. Enraged, it charged forward with wild ferocity, attacking everything in its path. It was the leader, the level 10 Wolf King. The scene shifted back in time. It was now 8:30 in the morning. Feeling that the pressure within the dungeon was too great, all the students decided to join forces and unite against the monsters. Party formation successful. Kui Zhao stood up and shouted, "Move out." The other groups announced, "We've formed parties too. We'll follow right behind you." Inside the dungeon, the other students were fighting desperately for survival. Counterattack! Counterattack! The main force is almost here. One by one, they gripped their swords and held their ground as they attacked. A sword slash cut across the monster's body. Many people had already fallen, but Lamb King killed the monster, dropping it on the spot. After killing it, the entire party gained experience. A system notification appeared. Successfully killed a mutant field mouse. Lam Kang Sautet Dovui Finale. Finally, we defeated a special monster. We can win. We can win. The main force has arrived. We won't lose either. The first player has brought us medicine. Lam Kang was so happy that he cried when he saw his level rise to level 2. I finally leveled up. At that moment, another notification appeared. Yet another exceptionally powerful student had emerged. Another first blood announcement? The level 9 fishing master player, Kwang Chao Sun Lin, has become the first to defeat a boss monster and has received the Boss Slayer title. Everyone cried out in shock. A level 9 fishing master? What the hell? A lifestyle class can be this powerful? He's already level 9. The scene shifted to 10 minutes earlier when Tamin was fighting the lead wolf. Its health bar had already fallen to 2/3. He had maintained the upper hand throughout the fight. Seizing the momentum, Tamin launched a relentless series of attacks at the wolf, leaving it unable to defend itself. He landed on the ground to build force for his next assault. Tamin leaped high into the air and threatened, "Don't think you're anything special just because you're the Wolf King. Your opponent is me, a reincarnator." The system promptly announced, "Congratulations. You have slain the Silverback Wolf King. Experience plus 500. Congratulations. You have reached level 10. Draw Sword Slash plus 145. Thunderbolt Sword plus 100. Loot obtained. Iron Claw Bone, Wolf King's Heart." The scene shifted to Duong Din, who had just killed a wolf. He sighed, "I used up all my strength, but I finally dealt with these hungry wolves." Zhang Chu said happily, "Good thing we made it in time. The dungeon title reward increased our attack. Otherwise, our party might have been wiped out." In contrast, Duong Din shouted angrily, "A level 9 fishing master? The dungeon must be bugged. How could a lifestyle class possibly reach level 9 this quickly? It's practically mocking us." He threw his sword to the ground. "This novice sword's damage is way too low. If that brat hadn't tricked me out of my money at the weapon shop, I'd at least have a silver-grade weapon by now." Zhang Chu encouraged him, "Brother Duong Din, that was just because that kid got lucky." Duong Din was still furious. Frowning, he snapped, "You useless trash, shut up. I was the one tanking all the damage earlier, and I even had a share experience with you. After killing so many wolves, I only reached level 2. This was the stupidest investment among all my stupid investments. It's infuriating. I wonder whether that brat has entered the dungeon yet. If I run into him, killing him would at least let me vent my anger." Zhang Chu tried to comfort him. "Brother Din, don't be angry. We're all level 2 now. Farming wolves will be much easier from here on." With his teammates cheering him on, Duong Din calmed down somewhat. Meanwhile, unlike Duong Din, Tamin had already reached level 10. He smiled to himself in delight. It's here. The system announced, "Congratulations on reaching level 10. The basic class advancement quest has been activated. The quest details will be randomly selected based on your actual circumstances." After reading it, Tamin felt deeply satisfied. In this life, reaching level 10 was still enough to activate his first class advancement quest. The system continued. The quest details will be randomly selected based on your actual circumstances. Tamin thought to himself, the important thing is that the opportunity has arrived. In his previous life, he had only reached level 10 after leaving the novice dungeon. As a result, his first class advancement quest had randomly refreshed into one suited to the E-rank dungeon he was challenging at the time, a much higher difficulty dungeon. Back then, he had been completely unable to complete a challenge at his level. He could only spend a great deal of time grinding to level 15 before returning to finish the quest. That had greatly reduced the rewards he gained from his first advancement quest. But this life was different. He had reached level 10 while still inside the novice dungeon. So, the system announced, "Congratulations. First class advancement quest activated. Eliminate the Redstone Cave Guardian. It is an extremely powerful elite monster. Quest location, Redstone Cave in Rage Tide Forest." Tamin thought in satisfaction. It appeared. Just as expected, the quest is in the novice dungeon. This will be much easier. Next, I just need to put all my level up points into agility. This first advancement quest is guaranteed to succeed. The system announced, "Congratulations. Your agility has exceeded 100. You have obtained the Swordmaster class, Swordmaster Grandmaster. Passive skill, low-grade silver quality. Proficiency, 0/100,000. You may equip any type of sword weapon and ignore all requirements." The scene shifted to Mystic Capital First Academy. Inside the observation room, someone said, "Principal, the dungeon data rankings for gifted novices from several surrounding cities have been released." Principal Wong felt that something was wrong. He examined it carefully for a while before replying. "Could there have been an omission? Where is Tamin, the student I thought so highly of?" The woman answered firmly, "There's no omission, Principal. This is all the data returned by the dungeon." At 8 o'clock, the dungeon's first blood record showed a Royal Swordmaster. "It must be the student Tamin you were concerned about." Principal Wong still felt something was off. He asked doubtfully, "Only the first blood title?" Even if his class is Royal Swordmaster, he was born with a full 10-star talent in every attribute. I even gave him a novice gift pack. Even if his skills are poor, he should be able to kill a few monsters through sheer strength alone. How could he not even make the top 500? At that moment, the door burst open with a loud bang, followed by an angry shout. "What is going on, Principal Wong? You said your academy had produced some outstanding talents this year." The speaker was Anim Lang, deputy mayor of Mystic Capital. She continued, "The 10-star awakened one is named Amin, correct? My secretary sent me your novice dungeon data. I reviewed it. The rankings do not contain the student Tamin you recommended." Principal Wong hurriedly placated her. "Deputy Mayor, and please don't be so angry. Although Tamin is a 10-star awakened one, his class is Royal Swordmaster, so his early combat strength is a little weak." And Neem Lang refused to accept that explanation. Even a Royal Swordmaster should not fail to make the top 500. "Stop explaining, Principal Wong. I think you exaggerated the strength of your students just to secure more spots at the Heavenly Tower Assembly." Principal Wong tried to explain, "I never," and Neem Lang continued berating him. "According to the current data, your academy has only one student named Neum Trake, a 9-star awakened one with a hidden class Demon Hunting Ranger. He is currently ranked 2nd. He has great potential and is the best candidate this year, capable of competing against the genius Lai Tram Kwong from the neighboring city. There is also someone I know, the eldest son of the Truong family, Truong Duong. His hidden class is Demon Channeling Warrior. He has an 8-star talent, and he is currently ranked 4th. He also has great potential. So now, I can only grant your academy 2 places at the Heavenly Tower Assembly." Principal Wong asked quietly, "Doesn't every academy receive 3 places every year?" Anim Lang turned and left angrily. "Who told your academy to rank last for the past 2 years? If you rank last again this year, next year you won't even have a right to participate in the Heavenly Tower Assembly." Principal Wong was flustered and tried to salvage the situation. "Then what if a student achieves excellent results later?" And Neem Lang replied, "If someone achieves good results, We'll discuss it then. I'm Busa. I'll be leaving first. With that, and Neem Lang left bluntly, not giving him a chance to say anything else. The Heavenly Tower Assembly was an important avenue for receiving quests, obtaining rewards, and improving one's strength. They absolutely could not lose the right to take part in it. At first, he had believed that a 10-star awakened student would give them a chance to secure another place this year. Instead, they had now lost one. Looking at the performance rankings, the principal felt both exhausted and hopeful. Tamin, you must work hard. Don't disappoint me. The scene shifted outside Redstone Cave. Tamin had arrived. The map indicated that the quest was here. Fortunately, he had not encountered many troublesome minor monsters along the way. He had never come here in his previous life, so he had no idea what kind of monster would appear. Just as he finished speaking, a pickaxe struck the ground hard. It was a level 6 gold-digging goblin. Seeing the blazing red light in its eyes, Tamin immediately recognized it as a goblin. He planted his foot behind him and gathered force. He shot forward and killed it, but after his sword fell, he warned, "I can't let you alert the entire cave." Contrary to Tamin's expectations, a system notification appeared. This goblin has activated the consciousness of the goblin cave. Goblin mode activated. Tamin exclaimed in surprise. What? A group of goblins emerged from the cave. His expression changed. It seemed this quest was not as simple as Tamin had expected. Sure enough, the system announced, all goblins in Redstone Cave will charge forth and attack you. Goblin mode was a free-spirited way of life, far removed from social norms and completely devoid of guilt, reflected in their laziness, domineering behavior, and greed. The goblins rushed Tamin, but every single one was cut down by a single slash. After wiping them out, Tamin calculated that although they were low level, their greatest advantage was their overwhelming numbers. He wondered whether his weapon's durability would hold out. While he was worrying, another disturbance came from outside, causing Tamin to turn. A large goblin, holding a weapon, was staring coldly at him with murderous intent. It attacked Tamin, but he dodged the strike with ease. Inside the cave, the other goblins raised their bows, aiming at Tamin. He had to continue blocking their sharp arrows. These guys are pretty smart, aren't they? While in midair, it was difficult for Tamin to maneuver and evade. It was not only arrows, they also wielded melee weapons. Caught off guard, Tamin was struck and sent flying several meters away. His strength was gradually declining, and his early-stage mana was insufficient to maintain hidden god steps for long. A group of goblins plus an elite goblin? He simply did not have enough early-stage skills to confront and defeat them head-on. It was genuinely difficult. Then he would have to be more flexible. Evade them first. As soon as he thought it, Tamin sprang out of the cave, leaving the goblins stunned. Seeing their target flee, the goblins hurried outside to search for him. Hidden in a corner and recovering his strength, Tamin curled his lips into a smile. Come here, all of you, my little darlings. A streak of light suddenly flashed before the goblins' eyes. Before they could understand what was happening, a distant sword slash flew toward them. A gift for you. Every goblin was blasted away. Tamin thought smugly, as long as I seize the advantage, I can maximize the power of draw sword slash. After sweeping away all his enemies, Tamin landed lightly on the ground. At last, every small goblin had been eliminated. Only a single elite remained. Tamin remained calm and said indifferently, somehow, it seems there's only one left. It was an elite level 10 goblin captain. The scene shifted to the wilderness. Zhang Chu was hiding in the grass. Looking outside, he called out, there. While I was scouting, I heard fighting inside that cave. Duong Din did not believe him. Stop joking. The regional system says the monsters there are level 7 and above. Who would dare challenge it now? Zhang Chu replied, but I really did hear the sounds of fighting coming from inside. Duong Din looked toward the cave in surprise. It looks like someone is coming out. Zhang Chu could hardly believe it. Who could be crazy enough to risk fighting monsters here at a time like this? Duong Din froze as he looked toward the fighting. Enemies really do meet on narrow paths. It's that brat who won against Duong Din in the sword contest. On the other side, Tamin had reached level 11. He calmly looked over the system panel and thought, this quest is quite interesting. So far, it's only been surprising, not dangerous. Tamin's expression changed slightly. He became alert and glanced upward. Duong Din attacked Tamin from above. Tamin did not counterattack. He merely shifted lightly to the side, throwing his opponent off rhythm. Duong Din roared angrily. He actually dodged it. Surround him. Don't let him escape. Tamin was completely unafraid. With one hand in his pocket, he said leisurely, "What are you talking about? I never intended to run." Duong Din voiced his old grievance. "You caused me great losses that day. Today, you're unlucky enough to have let me catch you in the dungeon." Tamin frowned in displeasure. "You people again?" Seeing his expression, Duong Din became even more threatening. "What's scared now?" Instead, Tamin scratched his head and asked casually, "Who are you?" Duong Din did not expect that response. "You forgot us? Damn it. Did you really forget that you won 5,000 Advent coins from me?" "Get him." Tamin replied calmly, "I don't remember, and there's no need to use force. Since you insist, I'll test my new skill." He summoned his sword, then tossed it into the air. The sword shot straight through them, giving each of them a slash. Royal swordsmanship. Everyone was severely injured and sprawled across the ground. Tamin looked pleased with himself. A great success. Duong Din clutched the wound on his arm and stared at Tamin's weapon. "RR Royal swordsmanship? How is that possible? That is a skill only mid-stage Royal Sword Masters can learn." Tamin secretly felt pleased. This Royal Swordsmanship skill was originally a silver-grade skill scroll dropped by the elite goblin he had killed. He had then upgraded it into a gold-grade skill scroll through evolution of all things. It had been a randomly unlocked skill. He had not expected it to fit so perfectly. Now that he had revealed Royal Swordsmanship, word would spread, and they would become even more certain that Tamin was a Royal Sword Master. More importantly, after eliminating all the goblins in Redstone Cave, he had obtained the hidden treasure location map for the final stage of the first advancement quest. The system announced, "You have unlocked a hidden location map." Tamin was initially overjoyed. But then, the next second, he broke out in a cold sweat and could only stand there helplessly. The hidden treasure coordinates. Redstone Cave, Part 2. Why Redstone Cave again? And what is this subtitle? The Goblin's Life. The scene shifted to 11:30 in the morning, when another group had successfully joined forces to eliminate the monsters. Finally, we worked together and cleared all the minor monsters in this area. Who said an all-girls party couldn't survive? We really have to thank Fan Fan, the 7-star Awakened one, for being willing to lead us. Let's divide the loot. As Fan Fan was preparing to leave, she stopped after noticing that another girl seemed unwell. "What's wrong? Are you tired?" Another girl hurriedly went to inspect the items dropped by the monsters. "Let's see whether anything good dropped." The girl replied, "Oh no, I'm fine." Suddenly, Fan Fan cried out in alarm. Where did the remaining teammate go?" A sharp scream drew her attention. Fan Fan rushed over to assess the situation. "Where is she? Where did she go? Wasn't she just helping divide the loot? The monsters in this area should all have been cleared. There's nothing on the ground. How could that be?" And yet, another sharp scream rang out through the gloomy forest. The scene shifted as the system suddenly displayed a series of information about the life of the species. Goblins usually live in dark, damp places such as caves, underground tunnels, deep forests, or ruins, because they fear strong light. Such locations help them hide from enemies while also making ambushes and raids easier. Goblins typically live in groups, forming small tribes or clans. Each group is led by a chief or elder, with warriors, craftsmen, hunters, and priests beneath them. Every role has clearly assigned duties, and they place great importance on teamwork to sustain the group's growth. Goblins have high fertility and reproduce rapidly. Even in harsh environments, they will use any means necessary to seize female creatures in order to maintain their reproduction rate. Their reproductive cycle is short. Female goblins are usually pregnant for only 1 to 3 months, far surpassing the reproductive efficiency of ordinary creatures. Goblin young mature early, becoming adults and capable of reproducing within 1 or 2 years after birth, rapidly forming a cycle of maturation and reproduction. As Tamin ran, he read the information about goblins, and his face turned red. What the hell was that? Why were the goblins in this world designed to be so weird? Then the system issued a notification. Destination coordinates reached. Tamin cried out in confusion. What does that mean? According to the system, he had arrived, but something felt strange. The place was surrounded by forest. Where was the cave? Were the coordinates wrong? With that thought, he quietly turned and observed his surroundings. A faint haze drifted before Tamin. His crimson eyes appeared as he analyzed the situation. At last, he understood. Since it was called Redstone Cave Part 2, it was easy to assume this place was also a cave. However, this time the key element was buried treasure. The true location was an underground cavern. It was quite clever. They had even used fire to create smoke and conceal the entrance. After realizing this, he quickly dug a hole in the ground and climbed down. After descending, Tamin cautiously looked around before slowly entering the cave. The moment he saw the goblins, Tamin hurriedly hid in a corner. This time, he had truly learned his lesson. Killing even one would alert every goblin in the cave. Recalling what had happened earlier, he understood his purpose here. He had come only for the treasure. While searching for the treasure, Tamin noticed a young woman lying weakly ahead. He immediately recognized her as a student who had entered the challenge. It seemed she had been ambushed by the goblins' smoke trap. These things were as hateful as they had been designed to be. Tamin gritted his teeth, furrowed his brow, and forced himself to stay calm without taking action. But at that moment, a loud scream echoed through the cave entrance. "Ah, no, don't come over here. Don't." Tamin looked at her and thought, there are still surviving challengers. Perfect timing. If she draws the goblins' attention, I can dig up the treasure without trouble. Then I can only ignore them. They can only blame themselves for not being strong enough to challenge this novice dungeon. Just as he was about to carry out his plan, Tamin heard another plea for help. "I don't want to play anymore. Somebody save me. I'll pay you a huge reward. Can anyone hear me? My sister is the vice president of the Zhang and group. So was Vanton." She screamed as the goblins attacked her. Then a sword stabbed into the ground. Tamin leapt out, drawing the goblins' attention. He used draw sword slash. As he drew his sword, a brilliant flash erupted, exploiting the goblins' weakness to light. The energy released when the sword left its sheath came with an intense burst of light. As long as he did not kill any goblins, he would not alarm the others inside the cave. Vanton was still lying there, groaning, "I can't run anymore." Tamin continued testing his hypothesis. They were not pursuing them. Just as expected, having been saved, Vanton stared at Tamin in a daze, then quickly thanked him. "Thank you for saving me. My name is Zhang Vanton." Looking at her, Tamin recalled that she was indeed the girl from the photograph. He replied, "No need to thank me. I was just passing by." Vanton interrupted him. "Wait, once I log out safely, I'll pay you handsomely. My sister is..." Tamin turned and answered, "Talk after you manage to survive and get out." Vanton begged, "Please, don't leave me behind." Tamin refused. "Don't follow me. I already saved you once. Your strength would only hold me back." At that moment, Tamin suddenly stopped and looked at the location marker in his system. "The treasure is here." Tamin reminded Vanton, "Those goblins are not chasing us, right? Look carefully." "Bantanrovia." "No." "I checked carefully." Tamin exclaimed happily, "I found it." This dungeon could drop a random treasure chest of up to silver quality. When Vanton turned around, a flash of light nearly blinded her. "Wow." Tamin said, "This is a low-gold random treasure chest. As its name suggests, it has a high chance of producing items, skill books, or high-level equipment." Behind him, Vanton's eyes lit up. It appeared. It appeared. Tamin was equally excited. What would it be? The system appeared and announced, "Congratulations. You have obtained a Shadow Flow outfit and a Soul Dancer skill scroll." Tamin's face immediately froze. "What? The extra reward I worked so hard to get by completing my first advancement quest only gave me this? The Shadow Flow outfit looks decent enough, but what is this Platinum Grade Soul Dancer skill scroll? It does not suit my class at all." Fulton spoke awkwardly. "Could it be because I'm here?" Tamin replied coldly. "Displeased what?" Vanton nervously clasped her hands together and said, "My awakened class is Soul Dancer." After hearing that, Tamin went cold. The system then delivered an icy notification. "Zhang Vanton has joined your party. You have become the party leader." Scene shift. At the 9 o'clock direction of the dungeon, a basic class advancement quest was underway. Eliminate 33 out of 50 players. Tram Kwong stood there radiating killing intent. The weak have only one path, death. "You're next." Kui Jiao. At this moment, Kui Jiao was being pursued by Tram Kwong's monster. At 12:30 a.m., she was running frantically through the dungeon. She was struggling to climb a mountain, clearly worried because something was chasing her. Kui Jiao cautiously poked her head out to see whether Tram Kwong was still searching for people. Unfortunately, she made a sound, and Tram Kwong immediately glanced in her direction. Weapon in hand, he advanced to attack. "Are we playing Eagle Catches Chicks?" "Kui Jiao det then defendet herself." Tram Kwong stood in a mountain opposite her and sneered. I didn't expect a weak little chick like you to endure my hunt for this long. You've wasted quite a bit of my time. Still, I have to admit that for a girl, you have some skill. It seems Mystic Capital Academy is not entirely full of trash. Kui Jiao asked why. Your uniform clearly identifies you as a student of Wuyang City Martial Academy. Why did you enter the novice dungeon in our district and murder people for no reason? Tram Kwong opened his information panel and replied, There's no special reason. My level 10 first advancement quest just happens to require me to kill 50 players. I cannot slaughter people freely in the dungeon zone of my own city, so I had to take my personal aircraft to your district's novice dungeon and kill them one by one. If you want to blame someone, blame your academy for having the most useless students among all the cities. If you want to squeeze someone, naturally you pick the softest persimmon. Kui Jiao hurriedly used a skill to protect herself. Summon Undead. Basic skeleton. Tram Kwong looked disdainful as he cleaved the skeleton in two with one strike. Your beginner toys cannot withstand the power of my blade. This time, I won't let you escape. Execution blade, flying strike. Kui Jiao wajet in dedo. She could not evade the attack. Fortunately, someone suddenly appeared and knocked away Tram Kwong's strike. Who is it? Neum Trake called out from afar. Kui Jiao, we'll cover you. Kui Jiao immediately recognized him as the boy from before. At midnight, the system announced, submit the treasure fragment. Tamin smiled. That meant the quest was complete. The system announced, basic class advancement quest completed. You have advanced to your first class, Sword God. All attributes increased by 10. Mythical talent, divine origin sword body. Effect, sword technique power doubled. Sword technique speed doubled. Sword technique proficiency gain doubled. As Tamin walked, he felt satisfied. With this, he was even more confident about challenging the dungeon's hidden boss. Van Ton, walking behind him, suddenly cried out. Tamin quickly turned around. The system announced, Soul Dancer Skill Scroll successfully used. Acquired skill, Soul Enhancement. High Platinum grade. Proficiency, 0.000. Consumes spiritual power upon use. When activated, all members of your party gain 200% additional experience. Tamin stared at the notification again, unable to believe it. What? A 200% experience boost? She actually randomly obtained a god-tier leveling skill. She's incredibly lucky. Tamin looked sharply at Van Ton, clearly having an idea. He pointed at Van Ton and declared loudly, I've changed my mind. Earlier, you said you wanted me to lead you through the novice dungeon. I agree now. Van Ton cried out in surprise. Really? That's great. All the mercenaries my sister paid to hire could not escape the Goblin Cave. If a solo explorer like you leads me through it, it will definitely be much safer. Tamin sighed helplessly. Although I do not like this kind of spoiled young lady who uses money to take shortcuts, there is nothing I can do for the sake of that skill. At that moment, Tamin suddenly glanced to the side, surprise flashing through his eyes. He saw Kui Jiao's name displayed on the screen. A message from Kui Jiao. Elsewhere, a group was still fighting fiercely. Danger notifications from the system continued to appear. Tram Kwong coldly watched every prey near him. Tram Kwong used Demon Sealing Single Slash. He raised his blade and met the power that had just been summoned. Neum Trake cried out in pain after being severely injured. Another single slash broke through my skill. A younger boy nearby ran over anxiously, calling for his brother, but he was immediately targeted as well. Execution blade flying strike. Another body fell beneath Tram Kwong's blade. Both Kui Jiao and Neum Trake were frustrated. This guy is too strong. All my teammates have died. She informed Neum Trake. I never expected Wuyang City Martial Academy to have such a powerful awakened one. Neum Trake nodded. Such power is indeed rare. Before entering the Novice Dungeon Challenge, I investigated awakened blade users with exceptional strength. Tram Kwong casually raised his sword again. According to the information, he is the geniusly Tram Kwong of Wuyang City. He possesses an innate 10-star talent and the hidden class Berserk Swordsman. Tram Kwong swaggered forward and said, Only the two of you are left. What a waste of time. My progress is only 35 out of 50. Neum Trake and Kui Jiao assess their remaining strength. As a range class, I cannot deal with him unless I widen the distance. My magical power is exhausted. I cannot summon undead creatures to support us anymore. Neum Trake quietly asked his teammate, Kui Jiao, can we still wait for reinforcements? Just then, a newly sent message appeared, bearing Tamin's name. Gui Jiao Ansua Halpa. No, there are no reinforcements left. Seeing the expressions on their faces, Tram Quang more or less understood. It seems you have been isolated. He charged at them like a madman. Then I'll kill the troublesome archer first. Kui Jiao bravely rushed forward and shouted, Neum Trake, run! Leave this place to me. Tram Quang slashed at her and scolded, You overestimate yourself. He glared at Kui Jiao and warned, A weakling like you has no right to save anyone else. Several sword strikes came at Kui Jiao, forcing her to fall backward. As she fell, she heard someone calling her name. Kui Jiao recognized the voice. It was Tamin. Meanwhile, Neum Trake, who had hidden in a corner, was still found by Tram Quang. Tamin called to Kui Jiao and told her, You have more than enough ability to save everyone. In her message, Kui Jiao replied, Tamin, the 9 o'clock area is dangerous. You two must not come near. Images of the two of them fighting side by side appeared in Tamin's mind. He thought, In my previous life, you came to save me despite the danger, Kui Jiao. This life is your turn to be in danger. After receiving the message, he had been quite surprised. A letter from Kui Jiao? Tamin decided to set out. As he walked, he wondered, Even now, you still put protecting others first, Kui Jiao. The moment Kui Jiao saw him, she shouted, Tamin, I told you this place was dangerous. When she saw that it was really Tamin, she froze. He walked down and sincerely reminded her, Do not always worry about everyone else before yourself. Tamin smiled and told Kui Jiao, In this life, I will protect you properly. Nearby, Tram Quang still carried his sword as he walked around. He looked up in surprise, spotted it, and exclaimed, Royal swordsmanship? His hand tightened as he prepared to fight. Looking up at Tamin's figure, Tram Quang gritted his teeth. This guy. The two sides rushed at each other. Tram Quang asked, Are you that 10-star royal sword master? Tamin's face darkened. You red-haired bastard. He charged at Tram Quang and demanded to know whether he was the one who had hurt Kui Jiao. Neum Trake ran out and asked in astonishment, Kui Jiao, is Tamin really that strong? I'll provide support from afar. We may have a chance of winning. Suddenly, a change occurred that left him dumbfounded. What? Tamin walked over to Kui Jiao and asked, Who is healing us? Van Tan took the initiative to introduce herself. I'm Domingiti Mate, Zhang Van Tan, A Sao Dan Se. I can heal everyone. Neum Trake said happily. Someone can heal our teammates? That's wonderful. Van Tan reminded them somewhat awkwardly, but I am not very proficient with my healing skill yet, so I need a little time. Kui Jiao was slightly unhappy. Tamin said he would not form a party, so why does he have a teammate now? Neum Trake hurried over and said anxiously, Sorry to trouble you, but please be quick. It is dangerous for Tamin to face that guy alone. Van Tan reassured him. There is no need to worry too much. He asked in confusion, What? Van Tan approached Neum Trake with some nervousness and said, Tamin is very strong. Tamin was still fighting Tram Quang. Finding himself at a disadvantage, Tram Quang gritted his teeth in disbelief. Isn't Tamin a royal sword master? How does he have such movement techniques? Tamin cast a murderous glance at Tram Quang. The two had temporarily pulled apart, yet Tram Quang still wore an arrogant expression as he praised his opponent. As expected of a 10-star awakened one, I have to admit that your strength truly exceeds my expectations. He raised his voice excitedly. Today, let us see whether I, Li Tram Quang, Weong City's 10-star berserk swordsman, am stronger, or whether your Mystic Capital Academy's 10-star royal sword master is stronger. Tamin called out Li Tram Quang. After thinking for a moment, he recalled that this man had truly been a notable figure in his previous life. Tamin silently evaluated him. I never had the chance to get acquainted with him. I never expected to meet him so soon in this life. Thinking of that, Tamin smiled. As he rushed forward to attack, he shouted, Interesting. Let us see whether my sword is sharper, or your blade is tougher. Tram Quang raised his sword to block Tamin's attack, then swung his hand and activated Bloodblade Flying Strike. Tamin sneered, You dare openly launch a flying blade at me? He then forcefully swung his hand upward. Tram Quang realized the problem and silently gritted his teeth. I took the bait. Tamin swung his weapon in a circle. Immobilize. My Bloodblade Flying Strike carries sword energy that can lock an opponent in place. Tamin's blade shot toward Tram Quang. His hand spun several times as he shouted, Die! Tamin thrust straight down and activated royal swordsmanship. Tram Quang did not remain still. He charged forward and used immobilization removal. Tamin smiled as he taunted him. My turn now. Return. Tamin's sword immediately spun toward Tram Kwong. Tamin reminded him gleefully, without a weapon in your hand, how do you intend to block? At that moment, a danger warning appeared around Tram Kwong. But now, Tamin no longer had a weapon either. Tram Kwong frowned in pain and displeasure. Reaching out, he grabbed Tamin's sword and charged at him furiously, roaring, "Then you don't need a weapon anymore." Tamin glanced over and activated hidden god steps. His body twisted as he sprang away, leaving after images behind him. Agility +5. Movement speed +. Tamin secretly smirked, while Tram Kwong stared in disbelief. His movement technique and speed suddenly increased. Tamin leaped up and raised his hand for a slap, teasing him cheerfully. "Sorry, but I've got my familiar weapon back. My sword has returned to him." Van Ton and Neum Trake rushed over anxiously. "Sister Thuong, we're here." "Tamin, hold on." Suddenly, Neum Trake stopped. The scene ahead had already changed. It seemed the battle was over. Neum Trake's group could only sigh helplessly as they looked at Tram Kwong kneeling on the ground. The battle. Then they looked at Tamin. "It's over already?" Neum Trake's eyes shone with admiration. Everyone ran over excitedly and shouted, "Tamin, you're amazing. That opponent was so strong. Yet before we could even heal up, you had already taken care of him." Tamin calmly walked forward. Behind him, Tram Kwong trembled. Van Ton caught a strange movement and shouted a warning. "Behind you! Be careful!" Tamin glanced back at the lowly-looking Tram Kwong. He was holding his sword and launching a sneak attack from behind. "You've exposed an opening." Danger warnings flashed one after another. The injured Neum Trake looked up, while Van Ton's eyes widened at the scene before them. Tamin had taken a fatal blow. Even he seemed unable to believe it. Tram Kwong was immensely pleased with himself. The strongest move of Martial Forest, Swift Blade. Everyone shouted anxiously. "Tamin!" He laughed madly. "Ha ha! Welcome to my blade formation." Kui Jiao struggled as she rushed forward. "I'm coming to save you, Tamin." Neum Trake grabbed her hand and urged, "Calm down, Kui Jiao." He anxiously held her back. "If you charge into his blade formation now, you'll only be throwing your life away for nothing." Kui Jiao Shifei Hadun. "Let me go. Even if I have to die, I'm still going to save Tamin." Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice telling her, "Kui Jiao, listen to him." She trembled and muttered the name, "Tamin." His voice warned her, "Don't come any closer." While the two were still arguing, Tram Kwong went mad. "How can you still be alive after taking so many of my blade strikes?" Tamin's voice drifted over from afar. "Are you sure you hit me?" Tram Kwong was startled. That voice isn't coming from here. Only then did he realize it and shout, "A substitute body!" Standing outside the formation, Tamin replied calmly, "You finally noticed." His face darkened. "I bet you never expected an ordinary royal sword master like me to have a skill like this." Equipment set. Shadow sword set. Logo grade 5/5 pieces active. Night shift. After equipping the full set, all sword techniques gain additional shadow element damage. This damage ignores physical defense. Set skill. Shadow clone. Creates a lifelike shadow duplicate for defense. While the shadow clone is active, attacks deal an additional secondary / equal to 50% of your normal attack damage. Tamin added, "That's my equipment set skill." Tram Kwong said resentfully, "There's absolutely no equipment set available in a novice dungeon. The only way to obtain one is the method you used." Tamin answered him readily, "You guessed right. I completed my beginner job advancement quest long ago." Tram Kwong flew into a rage. "Damn it, you actually got ahead of me." Tamin charged forward, having lost his patience. "Now, you can only let me cut you down however I please." Something seemed to fly out from Tram Kwong's hand. Tamin caught sight of it and looked after it. The object flew into the air and immediately exploded overhead. Neum Trake stammered in alarm. "That's a life-saving accessory." Van Ton asked, "A life-saving accessory?" Tamin confirmed, "That's right. It's a consumable thrown out at critical moments to allow a player to make an emergency escape from the dungeon. That thing costs hundreds of thousands of blue star coins. It isn't something you can obtain inside a dungeon." Tamin snorted irritably. It seems the neighboring city truly spared no expense to protect their 10-star genius. At 2 o'clock, Bion cried out in the laboratory, "Huh?" Principal Wong asked curiously, "What is it?" "We can now access the real-time player level rankings in the dungeon." Bion pointed to an abnormality on the map and explained, "No, that isn't it. The feedback data shows that between 12 and 12:30, A large number of player deaths occurred in the 9 o'clock area of the dungeon. He replied indifferently. What's so strange about that? A few teams must have encountered some difficult monsters. Bion shook her head. No, data analysis shows that those deaths were caused by players from outside our city. Principal Wong was startled. Players from outside our city? It seems the neighboring city is up to something again. Preserve all of this data, he said tensely. Every city's novice dungeon is competing to see who can clear it first. Mystic Capital Academy is currently at the bottom, so we've become easy prey in some people's eyes. He turned to ask, how are the students progressing in the dungeon now? Bion reported, the dungeon's progress is quite good. Most teleportation areas have already been occupied by our students. She added, the real-time dungeon footage shows that several capable players have gathered large groups and begun challenging the dungeon's boss stages. The two watched the live feed. Principal Wong looked up worriedly. The leader is the Zhang family's son, Truong Duong, a demon-channeling warrior with 8-star talent. He truly is promising. A few hours ago, Truong Duong was only level 6 on the rankings. The final boss of a novice dungeon is usually level 12. Now that he is leading such a large group, I estimate that he is already nearly level 10. I hope he can defeat the boss soon and bring some honor to our academy. The real-time ranking data has finished being analyzed, the assistant said. Just as you predicted, Principal Truong Duong is now level 9 and about to reach level 10. He is tied for first place on the real-time rankings. Principal Wong asked in surprise, tied for first? The other person must be Neum Trake. The assistant nodded. That's correct. But the players ranked second and third are both female students. The demon summoner Kui Jiao at level 7 and the soul dancer Zhang Van Tan at level 8. I never expected the female students to be this capable. He hurriedly asked Bion, do you see Tamin? She checked the rankings. Student Tamin is not listed among the ranked players. Help me check what level Tamin is now. She hesitated. Principal Wong urged anxiously. Have you found it? What level is he? When he saw the result, Principal Wong froze. Level 2. The data report indicates that after he earned the first achievement, Dungeon Log, 7:33 a.m., obtained title, First Blood, real-time data level, level 2. His level has not increased at all since then. At 14:30, the area notification reported that the level 14 Elite Thornfang Beast had been successfully defeated. Notification, congratulations on leveling up. Level 14, hidden equipment set unlocked, Kui Jiao said in disbelief. In just over 2 hours of hunting monsters, we've gained several levels already. Now I can. Neum Trake added, I've reached level 10. I can challenge the dungeon boss now. Level 8, level 10. The reason we leveled so quickly is all thanks to Zhang Van Tan and her experience-boosting skill. Van Tan turned around and reminded them, level 9. We all need to thank Tamin for giving me such a powerful skill. Kui Jiao reassured everyone, that's wonderful. Our team is truly outstanding now. Van Tan can boost experience and provide healing support. Neum Trake has precise long-range attacks. I can summon adorable little creatures to shield all of you. Most importantly, we have an incredible player like Tamin to lead us. Tamin gently reminded them, don't flatter me. This is all because of your own abilities. I'm merely benefiting from them. Kui Jiao was taken aback. Tamin, are you mocking us? If you hadn't come to save Neum Trake and me, we would have died to lead Tram Kwang's blade. Suddenly, unfamiliar yet strangely familiar memories flooded her mind. She smiled faintly. When you fought Li Tram Kwang, Tamin, you were truly amazing. So cool, so domineering. I believe that with our current lineup, challenging the dungeon boss will definitely be easy. Without turning back, Tamin merely nodded. Kui Jiao, you're not wrong. But unfortunately, my target isn't one of those ordinary bosses. Tamin did not hide his intentions. What I want to challenge is an even stronger hidden boss. The Elite Thornfang Beast had dropped an item, the Water Ripple Key. He explained to her, to find the hidden boss of the novice dungeon, you must first solve the 3 riddles hinted at in the dungeon data and collect all 3 corresponding items. Riddle 1. When the silver moon appears by the seashore, emerald waves part, and red armor sleeps in the depths of the frozen abyss. Tamin stood and continued. Activation point. The silver moon hangs high. The novice dungeon has no weather, so there's only one place where you can find a silver moon within the dungeon, a plant that grows in the shape of a moon. He prompted everyone, so what lies beyond this lake? Stepping forward, he announced, that is where the hidden boss is. Next is Riddle 2. When a lake turns to bone, take the iris petals as your guide. Beneath settled sands, the armor still keeps its old promise. Min analyzed the clues. As soon as I entered the dungeon, I collected the activation item, iris petals, based on the hint in Riddle 3 and combined with the water ripple key. Then comes Riddle 3. Hold the key and shine it upon the lake bed. 9 waves entwine around the knight's stone. The knight rests upon his sword, awaiting you to scatter the murky waves. After solving all the riddles, Min announced success. Kui Jiao asked blankly, "How did you solve those riddles?" The lake began to stir again. The group saw a whirlpool rising on its surface. Min understood immediately. Let the contract guide the way. Let starlight serve as the summons. In the distance, a gigantic face seemed to be watching the group. The being seemed to appear directly before Min. The red-armored knight, sleeping in the frozen abyss, break the limits alongside the azure waves. Urgent notification sounded repeatedly. Red alert. Hidden boss has appeared. Hidden boss has appeared. The one approaching was the guardian of the lake, the lost knight. Notification. Neum Trake has joined the party. Kui Jiao has joined the party. The group was ready, with Min as their captain. He stepped forward and urged everyone loudly, "Prepare for battle. The hidden boss challenge begins." 15 minutes later, the red-armored knight was searching for targets. The 4-person team silently huddled together. Neum Trake spoke somewhat helplessly. "I'm saying, is it really okay for us to keep hiding like this? How about we try again?" Everyone looked toward one person and called out together, "Captain!" Min pointed into the distance. "Tell me, that guy is riding a horse so fast. How are we supposed to kill him?" The 4 of them crowded together to read the information. Riding speed, 500 points. Lost Knight, level 19. Strength, 301 points. Constitution, 250 points. Agility, 102 points. Spirit, 102 points. Luck, 10 points. Riding speed, 500 points. Heavy Armor Mastery, level 5. 500 speed points? Even the combined speed of the 4 of us is less than half of his. After reading the information, Min was so shocked that cold sweat trickled down his face. Nearby, other players screamed, what is that? Where did a hidden boss suddenly come from?" A group of players fled frantically as the monster chased them. Min's group discussed the situation. 3 teams nearby have already been wiped out by the hidden boss. We summoned that hidden boss ourselves, so we need to act quickly. Kui Jiao ran up from behind. "Min, I followed your instructions." Holding a bottle of potion, she said, "We used up all the mana potions in the entire team. The delay trap has been set." Min began assigning tasks. Kui Jiao, good work. Neum Trake, Van Ton, follow the plan. The 2 immediately answered, understood. At this moment, Min seemed even more nervous than his teammates. In my previous life, I never challenged a novice dungeon's hidden boss. Most awakened ones would not risk summoning a hidden boss immediately after awakening, either. And a novice dungeon can only be challenged once in a lifetime, so very few people know the truth about its hidden boss. Retrieved information. This year, newly awakened players accidentally discovered the method for solving the novice dungeon's riddles. Forum discussion. Share puzzle-solving clues and work together. Method for summoning the novice dungeon's hidden boss. Min thought to himself, "I could only find vague records of the puzzle solutions, but I wrote them down. I never expected the hidden boss's equipment to be a mount with a speed of 500. Min had worked out a viable plan. If we kill him, over at Neum Trake's position, he stretched out his hand. According to Min's plan, they first had to knock the enemy off his horse. Neum Trake solemnly carried out the task assigned by the captain. He used multi-shot. Neum Trake's arrows flew toward the night boss, striking him and making him stagger. Information updated. Heavy Armor Mastery, level 5. Everyone assessed their opponent. This boss has level 5 Heavy Armor Mastery. My archery skill can't deal even a bit of damage to him. Guardian of the Lake has locked onto a hostile target. A teammate shouted from above. "Van Ton, I've drawn the boss's aggro." She answered with a slight tremble. "I know." At Van Ton's position, she frantically fanned flames. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Min watched and evaluated the situation. Step 1. Neum Trake uses accurate long-range attacks to lure the boss back. Step 2. Vanton creates smoke in the path the boss must take when it turns around, disrupting its vision. After thinking it over, Tamin secretly felt pleased. He had learned this move from the Goblin Cave. The night boss rode along the path, still unaware of where the team members were hiding. Then it seemed to sense something and swept its red eyes around. The night boss sent out a signal, summoning a group of skeletons. It activated the delay trap. Now, it was Kui Jiao's turn to act. Area of effect, skill, cooldown, 3 minutes 25 seconds. She reassured herself. If Tamin hadn't told me, I would never have known that a basic summoning skill could combine multiple summoned creatures into a magic delay trap. The night boss swung its sword in a straight slash, but power coming from elsewhere drew its attention. Kui Jiao used soul-draining art to delay its mana. Standing in an advantageous position to observe, Tamin calculated. Step 3. Use Kui Jiao's prearranged trap to restrain the boss's horse. Then add Vanton's slowing magic to lock down the boss's movements as well. Tamin stretched his body and thought, I have to admit it. A delighted smile appeared on his lips. Without their cooperation, looking down at the night boss, Tamin prepared to enter the battle. As he moved to assassinate it from behind, he silently thanked his 3 teammates. I might not have been able to solo this boss. Tamin lunged forward with all his strength and tightly embraced the Lost Knight's calf. He gritted his teeth and clung to it like a leech. Then Tamin threw his entire body backward, shouting, "Get off that horse!" A thunderous crash erupted from the heart of the forest. Under Tamin's relentless strength, the Lost Knight was thrown to the ground. Over there, Zhang Vanton cheered. Success! He knocked the boss off its horse. Kui Jiao calmly reminded her, don't relax yet. She heightened her vigilance and concluded, this is only the first phase. 10 minutes earlier, Kui Jiao had anxiously offered her opinion. Tamin, your plan is great, but if we do this, both Vanton and I will completely run out of mana. Even if we manage to knock him off his horse, we won't have any way to keep damaging the boss afterward. Tamin replied expressionlessly, it's fine. That will be enough. He curled his lips into a confident smile. At that point, just leave it to me. With that, Tamin summoned a sharp blade. I'll face the Lost Knight alone. The Lost Knight landed heavily on the ground, and dust spread everywhere. Tamin declared in a low voice, I'll solo it. Tamin shot through the air like a gale, launching an attack. A razor-sharp sword slash tore forward and collided with the Lost Knight's blade, erupting violently at the point of impact. The explosion formed a brilliant, jagged mass of white energy, while thick white dust and smoke spread through the air. The Lost Knight raised his sword again and charged at Tamin. Tamin swiftly raised a hand to block. The terrifying shockwave spread into a massive vortex that seemed to swallow the entire forest, uprooting trees and rocks and pulling them into the raging current. Niamtrake struggled to keep his footing and cried out, this is too intense. Tamin can actually trade blows with this hidden boss all by himself? I can't just stand here and watch. He charged forward heroically. I could still use my skills. I have to go help. Kui Jiao suddenly stretched out an arm to stop him. Wait, Niamtrake. Without turning around, she reminded him sternly, leave Tamin to handle it. She curled her lips. Trust him. We have our own task. Meanwhile, Tamin raised his sword high and began gathering power. Hidden God steps, consecutive razor-sharp slashes rained down, leaving the Lost Knight no chance to counterattack. From a knight's perspective, Tamin's eyes were filled with killing intent and resolve. The system continuously displayed SPD plus SPD plus. Tamin swung his hand and slashed downward again. He said coldly, too slow, so after leaving your mount, this is all you can do? A brilliant white force engulfed the Lost Knight. The system displayed Hidden Boss, Guardian of the Lake, Lost Knight level, 19 HP, 301 Constitution, 250 Agility, 102 Spirit, 102 Luck, 10 Speed, 55 Skill, Heavy Armor Mastery, level 5. Tamin tightened his grip on the sword hilt and strode forward. His narrow eyes swept over the hidden boss as he concluded, so this is all a hidden boss amounts to. With that, Tamin dashed forward like the wind. A heavy slash struck the Lost Knight and knocked him backward. The system displayed Heavy Armor Mastery activated. The knight rose and counterattacked with all his strength. The system notified, weapon durability remaining 7%. Tamin watched the lost knight and calculated, my sword doesn't have enough durability left. Its damage has dropped significantly. As light shone down through the dust, Tamin remarked, that heavy armor trait is quite troublesome. The knight lifted his face and fixed his crimson eyes onto Min. Then the lost knight began running quickly, as though searching for something, glancing around the forest. Something suddenly caught the lost knight's attention. He wanted to find his mount again. From atop a tree, Tamin looked down at him and remarked, pretty smart. You know that only when you're mounted does your speed become an advantage that can help you win. Tamin smiled confidently, but unfortunately, they've already taken your horse away. Elsewhere, the lost knight's horse threw back its head and neighed. Kui Jiao pulled hard on its reins and warned, stop struggling. We won't let you escape. Beside her, Neum Trake told Van Ton, keep using your magic to slow down its struggles. Sweating, Kui Jiao said, our task of controlling this horse is extremely important. This is what Tamin entrusted to us. She recalled their conversation. Remember this. If the plan succeeds and we force the boss off his mount, leave the boss to me. You all have an extremely important task. Kui Jiao had asked. An extremely important task? Tamin nodded. Keep the boss's horse under control. Don't let him mount it again. The lost knight drew his sword and slashed. Tamin nimbly leaped away from the danger zone. A surging burst of blue energy suddenly erupted. Water, prison. Tamin leaned backward to dodge, not forgetting to comment. So, you know a few skills too? The lost knight seized the chance and swung his sword, preparing to strike. In an instant, a razor-sharp slash flew out, royal sword. The system displayed, weapon durability remaining 3%. Faced with the sudden attack, Tamin pushed off and flipped backward. His expression remained unchanged as he landed steadily. Tamin calculated seriously. I can't keep wasting my weapon's durability. He studied the lost knight and assessed. His armor is about to break. Streams of energy shot out in rapid succession, filled with murderous intent. The knight charged straight toward Tamin. Tamin lowered his head, tightening his grip on the hilt and taking a ready stance. The instant the knight attacked, Tamin decisively slashed sideways to block. Taking advantage of that moment, the knight stretched out his hand and grabbed Tamin's body. The lost knight glared at him with crimson eyes, then clenched Tamin's throat with all his strength. Fresh blood splattered across the knight's armor. This move was equally effective against both players and monsters. Tamin revived. Activate equipment set. He smiled. I like this set. He flashed to the lost knight's side and drove a punch straight into the armor. Royal sword. After finishing the attack, Tamin escaped the encirclement. The armor had been broken. The system displayed, weapon durability depleted. Tamin raised one hand and declared, Shadow Sword, it's over. 3:30 p.m., Mystic Capital Academy. Before them was the Academy Management Information Room. Principal Wong walked in unhurriedly. A voice called out, you finally made it, Principal Wong. He glanced around before saying, it seems the principals have been talking in the information room for quite some time. Someone replied, we only arrived not long ago. You're simply the last one to arrive, Principal Wong. What's wrong? Don't tell me Mystic Capital Academy still doesn't have any students capable of challenging the dungeon boss in the novice dungeon. By convention, the clearance results are announced one after another after 3 in the afternoon. But Principal Wong, your Mystic Capital Academy always comes in last every year, so it's no surprise that you aren't in a hurry to come report to the information room. Principal Wong replied, I'm late for a reason unrelated to the dungeon. He continued solemnly, I received real-time feedback data from inside the dungeon. A player who does not belong to our academy secretly entered Mystic Capital Academy's novice dungeon. Although we still haven't identified that outsider's true identity. I'd guess it's a student from one of the 3 academies in other cities who slipped over to cause trouble. Isn't that right, Old Xia? Could it have been you? The data from the attack students also recorded someone using saber skills. I heard that Tram Kwong, the genius student of your Weiyang Martial Academy, is an expert with sabers. The other principal stammered in rebuttal. Why you? Don't make wild accusations without evidence. Tram Kwang from our academy is currently still inside the novice dungeon. He is a key member of the team challenging the final boss. I believe they'll clear the dungeon within half an hour. Our Dongling Academy already has 3 groups of students who have reached the required level and are challenging the boss. Our Southern Frontier Academy has also entered an intense battle with the boss. As long as they perform normally, news of their clearance will surely arrive soon. Principal Wang pursed his lips and began calculating. It seemed the other academies were all progressing smoothly in their boss challenges. Every second was crucial now. He took out 2 cards and pondered. If our academy fails to claim first place in clearing the dungeon this year, then we'll only have 2 spots left for the Heavenly Tower Assembly. This is the fewest we've ever had. A figure appeared in his mind. Principal Wang determined. At present, the player closest to defeating the boss is student Truong Duong. All our hopes can only rest on his strength. 3:15 p.m. The atmosphere on the other side was incredibly tense. Don't hold anything back. Use every skill you have. Kill the final boss. A demonic beast stepped out from the dust and smoke, roaring as it attacked. Its gleaming eyes swept toward its prey. The demonic beast slashed down fiercely with its sharp claws. Forest King's wrath. Simba. Everyone was knocked down one after another by its terrifying power. Someone stared at it and assessed. Level 15. We're completely outmatched. Our levels are still too low to challenge it successfully. No, Truong Duong made up his mind. We've come this far. He told himself that the reward for clearing the novice dungeon had to belong to him. Truong Duong recalled the messages. Nam, Truong Duong, help me. Truong Duong, what happened? Did that Tamin cause trouble again? Nam, that brat hurt me. Truong Duong, where are you? I'll come find you. The final message was etched deeply into his mind. Nam, help me get revenge. With that, Truong Duong raised his hand, calculating that he would obtain the final reward and avenge Hu Meng. Just as he was preparing to act, many blue streaks of light appeared ahead. He was somewhat confused. What's happening? Truong Duong seemed to realize something. This is... His eyes widened at the sight before him. The system displayed, Dungeon Announcement, Hidden Boss Defeated. Congratulations to the player team for slaying the hidden boss. Congratulations to all players. Prepare to return in triumph. Meanwhile, the Lost Knight had also been defeated by Tamin. Tamin smiled. It's over. Kui Jiao and the others watched the moment he collapsed. It's Tamin. Kui Jiao et glim hap bili. It must be Tamin. He successfully soloed it. On Principal Wang's side, brilliant golden energy spread out. The result is here. He was startled. Someone stated firmly. Tram Kwang succeeded? It must be our Dongling Academy. Another voice countered, not necessarily. It could be our Southern Frontier Academy. Principal Wang looked up. His entire body suddenly stiffened. The screen displayed Mystic Capital Academy. Voices filled the air. This is absurd. A hidden boss? There's a hidden boss in the novice dungeon. Since when did Mystic Capital Academy have a team powerful enough to kill a hidden boss? Wasn't the initiative supposed to be on Truong Duong's side? This year's awakened students are incredible. They're practically gods. Kui Jiao ran to Tamin and cheered. Tamin, you're amazing. Power surged through Tamin. Level 16. Everyone was delighted with the outcome. We jumped 2 levels in an instant. The system panel appeared. Congratulations. You have reached level 16. Tamin turned around and waved the group over. Come here. While the dungeon exit portal hasn't activated yet, let's split the hidden boss rewards evenly. Neum Trake scratched his head. I told you I don't need any rewards. I'm already very satisfied just to have leveled up. Vanton nodded in agreement. Me too. Thank you, Tamin, for saving my life. Kui Jiao was the last to speak. Lam Trake said awkwardly, from saving us from Tram Kwang's blade to uncovering the hidden boss's secret and finally soloing the boss. I really wasn't strong enough to help with anything. If I take a share of the spoils too, I honestly wouldn't dare accept it. As soon as he finished speaking, he cried out, "Ah!" Van Ton stared blankly at the system panel. The captain has distributed rewards. Teammate Neum Trake has received loot, soul-shaking bow level requirement, 20 class requirement, ranger bow proficiency, soul-shaking enhancement. Consume spiritual power to grant every arrow fired from this bow a random enchantment effect. The captain has distributed rewards. Teammate Zhang Van Ton has received loot, soul necklace effect, increases soul power reserves and extraction rate, restricted to the soul dancer class. Tamin explained, as you can see, The rewards from this hidden boss include class-exclusive items suited specifically to each of you. That means, Tamin stated firmly, I'm not the only one recognized. You are all confirmed as members of the group that successfully defeated the Novice Dungeon hidden boss. The dungeon recognizes all of you. Tamin continued calmly. Without your help, we couldn't have completed this challenge at all. Then the system's mechanical voice announced, congratulations to all challengers for clearing the F-rank dungeon, Raging Tide Forest. Dungeon completion time, 8:20. Tamin quietly reminded everyone, time's up, we're about to leave the dungeon. A glowing energy vortex appeared ahead. Tamin continued explaining, behind each of you, once a dungeon is completed, the reward settlement phase begins. The contribution points earned by every player who challenged the dungeon will be added to their real accounts. Once players finish a dungeon, an exit portal will appear beside every surviving player. Congratulate yourselves. He looked behind him and officially announced, we survived. We cleared the challenge. 4:30 p.m. All players were confirmed to have left the dungeon. Outside the gate, cries erupted everywhere. No, the participants emerged one after another. They came back alive. One boy screamed in panic. My sister isn't here. A girl wailed. My boyfriend isn't here either. Kui Zhao announced. Only 10 students from our class made it back. Tamin added, only 17 people from our class survived as well. Niam Trake said pensively, of the people who entered the dungeon with me, only I made it out alive. Vanton lowered her head and quietly said, me too. Kui Zhao added dejectedly, me too. Tamin appeared calmer. After the awakening day, this is what the world becomes. In a low voice, he continued, in a world ruled by awakened people, the strong prey on the weak, and the victors become kings. Only by constantly challenging ourselves and becoming stronger can we stand firm under this world's rules. Unable to hold back his tears, Niam Trake began sobbing. His voice remained steady as he said, some people are devastated by losing teammates, family, and lovers. But others are overjoyed to gain rewards, power, and money. Tamin judged coldly. What an absurd and insane world. Principal Wang's image appeared on the screen as he announced, congratulations to all of you who survived and successfully cleared the Novice Dungeon. For you, this was the first trial you faced after awakening and entering the world of the awakened. It was also the final lesson the Academy prepared for you as your graduation examination. I hope all students remember this. Being awakened does not simply mean possessing power, wealth, and fame. It also represents responsibility, love, and peace. Those of you who have lost loved ones, remember this grief and pain. Those who achieve victory should also remember the responsibility and purpose they must pursue. Kui Zhao blushed and glanced at Tamin. What about you? So many of our classmates have died. In this world full of rules, are you sad or happy? Principal Wang's voice continued to echo. I hope every one of you will find your own value on the path of awakening. Tamin answered, those classmates will revive. As soon as he spoke, Principal Wang announced the same thing. Only after completing this lesson can you truly understand the meaning of the Novice Dungeon. Your classmates, family members, and loved ones who were lost will be revived within 30 minutes. Niam Trake cried out in astonishment. The other students were equally incredulous. Really? Principal Wang continued. They will return from the dungeon to your side. Kui Zhao froze and looked at Tamin. She gazed curiously at his back. Tamin, why do you know everything? The system sent a notification. Dungeon statistics complete. Entering the reward settlement phase. Li Guangyang defeated Fervent Wild Dog times 3 defeated Bloodthirsty Rooster times 1 total monsters defeated. For total dungeon contribution, 0.03 received 16 Advent coins. The next information concerned Tamin. Player Tamin defeated Gray-Spotted Wild Wolf times 113 defeated Mutated Monkey times 1 defeated Goblin Worker times 24 defeated Elite Goblin times 1 defeated Sharp Fang Beast times 87 defeated Elite Sharp Fang Beast times 13 defeated Hidden Boss times 1 completed the basic class advancement quest past the Red Rock Cavern area without taking damage, achieved the first dungeon, clear perfect challenge final rating. S rank, received title, King of Newcomers effect. all attributes plus 15, proficiency gain for all skills plus 10%. Principal Wong had already been waiting inside. The moment he heard movement, he spoke. "You're late." Without turning around, he said to him the citywide Novice Dungeon Academy rankings. Student Tamin is at the top. Tamin scratched his head without any embarrassment and replied, "I overslept." The information on the large display read, Mysterious Capital City Novice Dungeon Rankings. Rank 1, Tamin, level 16. Shanghai, Zhongzhong, level 12. Rank 3, Neum Trake, level 12. Zhangbon, Zhangvantang, level 11. Zhangnam, Guizhao, level 10. Rank 6, Lai Kuang Long, level 8. Rank 7, Tun Tu Duong, level 7. Tamin looked at the information and asked curiously, if a novice dungeon is over, does that mean my school life is also over? He thought to himself, no need to be modest anymore. Not changing my information shouldn't be a problem, since the gap between Tamin and his classmates will only widen by tens of thousands of miles. Then Tamin glanced at the man and called out softly, "Hey, I'm talking to you." He looked helplessly at Principal Wong's state and reminded him, "How much longer are you going to keep hugging?" His eyes sparkled as he expressed his gratitude. "Thank you, Tamin." Principal Wong burst into tears, sobbing with tears streaming down his face. "Although I don't know how you did it, you've helped our mysterious capital academy, which has been at the bottom for so many years, finally escape that position." He switched to an enthusiastic tone and told Tamin, "Do you know, after the information was released, that old geezer from Vo Duong Academy was speechless. Before this, every time the schools met, he wanted to show me up. Now let's see what he dares to say. Our academy is ranked first among the 4 neighboring cities. Tamin, you are the top-ranked academy dungeon student among all academies." Tamin asked leisurely, "So where does that Lai Tam Kwong from Vo Duong Academy rank?" Tamin smiled as he watched Principal Wong indignantly recount. That Lai Tam Kwong, a genius sword fanatic admired by everyone, only managed to get 3rd place among all academies. I heard that an unexpected accident happened midway, causing him to be seriously injured and slowing down the remaining time to kill the boss. Principal Wong remembered something and asked curiously, "Right, Tamin, how did you manage to kill the hidden boss? Even with a 10-star talent, you're still a sword master, a weak profession in the early stages. From what I know about you, you don't come from a wealthy or powerful family, and you don't have enough money to buy divine equipment. You could kill a boss above your level." He gestured exaggeratedly as he explained, "In all my years as principal, I've never seen a student as outstanding as you. In short, it couldn't have been because of those extra items I gave you after you awakened, right? Those were only enough to slightly enhance your combat effectiveness." Tamin calmly replied, "It was luck." Principal Wong repeated curiously, "Luck?" He added, "Because I was lucky enough to obtain many useful items and skills." Principal Wong asked in surprise, "Does the novice dungeon have that many powerful treasures and artifacts?" Tamin recounted the process, and of course I also met some wonderful teammates. Tamin felt awkward inside. He couldn't possibly tell him that Tamin had been reborn, so he continued spinning the story. "Without their help, I wouldn't have been able to kill that hidden boss either." Principal Wong seemed to understand. Smiling kindly, he replied, "So that's how it is. It seems that, Tamin, you're not only an exceptional awakened, but also an excellent leader." Principal Wong reminded Tamin of something else. "Right, the other students also came to receive their top 5 awards this morning. Student Kui Jiao, that girl, kept praising you nonstop after forming the team, talking about how amazing you are." Tamin smiled lightly and said, "This morning, Kui Jiao had already messaged me to go together, but I declined." Tamin recalled what Kui Jiao had said at that time, when fighting Lai Tam Kwong. "Tamin, you were really too cool, too amazing." He rolled his eyes in annoyance, thinking that he knew that girl would praise him endlessly, making him die of embarrassment. She was still the same as always, loving to compliment others. He heard someone calling his name. Tamin received it. A sudden new development startled him slightly. There was a package delivered directly to Tamin's location, along with a message. "This is your heaven-piercing tower token." Tamin turned over the package and saw the character for heaven engraved on its underside. Remembering that embarrassing speech, Principal Wang laughed heartily and teased, "Thank you for your outstanding performance in winning first place," which even made the deputy mayor, who initially looked down on our mysterious capital academy, allocate more tokens to our academy from other schools. This year, our school has received 5 token slots. I've distributed them to you, student Kui Jiao, student Neum Trake, student Zhang Vantan, and also student Truong Duong. He announced, "It's time for me to explain the importance of the heaven-piercing tower token to you." Tamin smiled and replied, "No need to explain. I understand it extremely well." He recalled the process of the heaven-piercing tower. It could be said to be a place that many newly awakened people dreamed of. After that, when an awakened challenger completed the novice dungeon, they were considered to have graduated from the academy and officially stepped into the world of the awakened. That was because most people could only train by starting with low-level dungeons, gradually challenging stronger ones step by step and building a solid foundation. However, that method was risky and slow. But the heaven-piercing tower qualification was different. Those who held the heaven-piercing tower token would have an additional, faster training path. Tamin pondered. Although the challenges inside were diverse, the rewards for advancement were both plentiful and quick. In his previous life, he hadn't been qualified to participate in the heaven-piercing tower from the start, which prevented Tamin from creating a significant gap with most other players in the early stages, and the resources he obtained after distribution were also insufficient. His gaze became firm as he calculated. But this life is different. Tamin was determined to seize all the good opportunities and prepare well for the future. At this moment, Principal Wang reached out and called his name. Tamin. He smiled and announced, "Congratulations, you have officially graduated from the mysterious capital Awakening Academy." Drawing on his experience, Principal Wang warned Tamin, "The challenges ahead will no longer be like the novice dungeon, where you can revive after 7 failures. The trials you will face in the future all have only one chance. These are all gambles that can cost you your lives." Tamin listened quietly to every word of his advice. After finishing his reminder, he reached out to express his thoughts to him. "I hope you, a hidden genius and master, will have a bright future and contribute to this world." Tamin gradually broke into a new smile. He reached out his hand to clasp Principal Wang's and replied, "Thank you, Principal." He responded, "I understand." In mysterious capital city's wealthy district, the cityscape was extravagantly luxurious, far surpassing the surrounding areas. At one house, the outer door swung open, signaling someone's entry. A man rushed in and called loudly, "Vantan." He ran over to hug Vantan and praised her endlessly. "Well done, my dear. You returned safely from the novice dungeon and even got 3rd place in the academy rankings. It seems Little Tan has found some really capable helpers." Zhang Lam, sitting in the room, interjected with a reminder. "Unfortunately, the credit this time doesn't go to her." He exclaimed in disbelief, "Huh?" Vantan's father looked bewildered as he listened to the correction. It was an awakened student named Tamin who helped Vantan. Vantan also turned to correct him. "That's right, Dad. The helpers my sister hired carelessly fell into the monster's trap, and I almost failed 7 times in the dungeon too. Fortunately, student Tamin appeared. He saved me." She smiled happily and continued, "He not only saved me, but also gave me many skill books and equipment, and even took me leveling and cleared the dungeon. He's a very formidable challenger." Zhang Lam also began talking about Tamin. "I had initially sought out that Tamin to help Vantan. At that time, there were still some conflicts. No matter how much money I offered, he wouldn't agree." She recounted with great satisfaction, but unexpectedly, they met again inside the dungeon by chance. "This time, we really have to thank him." Vantan's father scratched his head awkwardly and said, "You two seem to admire this student quite a bit. It looks like I need to find a proper time to thank him." Vantan's father said warmly, "Based on what you two have said, this awaken really is remarkable. I'd like to get acquainted with him as well. Little Lamb, help me find out how to contact him." Suddenly, he announced another shocking piece of news. To celebrate Vantan successfully completing the dungeon, Dad has decided to invite the best chef to cook for you two today. Vantan's father took out his phone and called. "Hello? I'm in the middle of an urgent meeting right now." Urgent or not, help me reschedule everything. No one knew what the person on the other end said, but Vantan's father cried out in shock, "What?" He rushed outside while asking the other person to explain further. Once outside, he said loudly, "Comrade Chief, over the past 2 days, it's been discovered that someone has sent assassins to kill many of our people. Do you know who's behind this?" After hearing the name, Van Ton's father froze. It's the Truong family. 2 days later, Tamin was on the phone with Kui Jiao. She told him, Tamin, we're planning to depart for the heaven-piercing realm together today. You can't go on this mission alone this time. He answered calmly, I know. Over the last 2 days, I found everything I need and made all the preparations. I'll meet up with everyone once I get there. Kui Jiao replied on the other end, Got it. We'll wait for you. Afterward, Tamin's eyes shifted unhappily as he silently called out the name Heaven-Piercing Tower. He stood there, recalling Principal Wang's words. For Tamin to go to the Heaven-Piercing Tower, all he needed was to use his token. He could summon a teleportation gate to his destination. This teleportation gate could only be entered by those who held the Heaven-Piercing Tower token. Tamin raised the package from earlier. Summon token? The system automatically confirmed him as eligible. Seeing the scene before him change, Tamin muttered in surprise, I'm out? His eyes lit up as he began to think. He silently calculated in his mind a new challenge, the Heaven-Piercing Tower. Here I come. The tower of that association appeared. A head emerged from the spatial gate, followed by Tamin's body as he slowly stepped through. He looked at the somewhat ethereal scenery here and wondered to himself, is this it? Tamin looked upward and sighed. The 100-story tower, the domain of the Heaven-Piercing Tower Association. He tried hard to remember. In his previous life, Tamin had only had the opportunity to come here much later by chance. As Tamin walked, he silently admired the view. It seems many challengers who receive tokens from all over the country are being teleported here in droves. Thinking this, Tamin felt even more excited. He could challenge this place again. Tamin was now becoming interested. Tamin raised the item. Heaven-Piercing Tower token. Confirmation successful. Identified target. Tamin. Then he continued toward another area. Tamin stared in amazement. Oh, the information directly invites new challengers to wait in the first-floor hall for the ceremony to begin. Tamin still stood there, wondering silently, why doesn't this main hall look like the one from my previous life? He stepped into the hall, marveling inwardly. In this life, Tamin realizes that this life is much larger. Suddenly, he heard someone calling his name. Tamin, she was the first to call out to him. You're finally here. He was slightly surprised and greeted everyone. Gui Zhao, and Neum Trake, and Van Ton too. Tamin smiled calmly. You guys arrived so early. Kui Jiao scolded him unhappily. Early, my foot. We've been here for ages. Why you always like to act alone, Tamin? She still tried to explain. Didn't I send you a message asking you to come today? Tamin said, I told you that you guys were the ones who made the appointment. Kui Zhao not that in gone fi my son. Of course. We've been waiting for you for a long time. So you become friends now? Of course. After going through all those hardships in the novice dungeon, we're all good friends and comrades. Van Ton, you say something? Van Ton also nodded and chimed in, yeah, that's right. Kui Jiao reminded him of something else. Plus, our mysterious capital academy is the only one that got qualifications for the Heaven-Piercing Tower. Who knows what might happen later? Only by acting together can we look out for each other. While Kui Jiao was speaking, a voice interrupted. Have you guys forgotten about me? He ran over from behind Tamin and shouted, especially you. Truong Duong attacked from behind, yelling Tamin's name, but he easily dodged it. The nearby students saw this and voiced their dissatisfaction. Hey, someone's fighting. How dare they fight here? Kui Jiao angrily questioned, Student Truong Duong, what are you doing? He went crazy and replied, the matter of injuring human. Today, I'll settle the score with you. The nearby students whispered among themselves, is this guy really going to fight? Truong, don't say any more. During the novice dungeon period, you hid well, so I could never find you. He continued cursing Tamin. I didn't expect you to get the Heaven-Piercing Tower qualification too. Kui Jiao, standing nearby, was a bit flustered and asked, what happened to Human? Truong Duong ignored Kui Jiao and focused only on cursing. Tamin, then it's perfect. I'll settle the score with you here today. Kui Jiao looked at Tamin in confusion. He replied smugly, don't worry about him, Truong Duong. All the troubles you and Nam Humang caused, we can't resolve this issue here today. A security alert appeared. Conflict detected in the area. Tamin reminded Truong Duong further, understand the situation here. This is a place where fighting is not allowed. All acts of disruption in the Heaven-Piercing Tower are prohibited. Truong Duong was punished, but still shouted loudly, don't think you can run, Tamin. You just wait. He looked down calmly and smiled. There are people watching from above, Truong Duong. After the Heaven-Piercing Tower is over, we'll settle things then. The nearby students were in an uproar. So, even though it seems like no one is receiving us, we're actually being watched. Indeed, this heaven-piercing tower is not simple. Tram Kwong, standing in the crowd, glanced lightly towards the commotion. Tamin turned around and called to the other members, "Follow me." The other students calculated that Truong Duong had been punished earlier and first took that challenger to the infirmary. Meanwhile, Kui Jiao walked alongside and wondered, "Why are we coming here, Tamin? The ceremony hasn't started yet. Shouldn't we wait for it to begin before reading the heaven-piercing tower challenge instructions?" Tamin explained, "There's no need to line up or read any instructions. Those things are for first-time visitors. The secret of this place lies in these seats." The group stopped to rest. Kui Jiao asked suspiciously, "Is this really your first time here, Tamin?" Tamin asked back, "What do you think? Just sit quietly in the chair for a while." She was stunned upon hearing this and exclaimed, "Huh?" Tamin opened the system interface and continued explaining. "The heaven-piercing tower's system selection will appear soon." Kui Jiao leaned over in surprise and exclaimed, "Really?" Tamin turned and asked Kui Jiao, still climbing the tower and clearing levels. She looked confused and replied, "I'm not sure either." Next, Van Ton called them over. "Neum Trake, come sit down quickly." He didn't pay attention to the two of them, but said to Kui Jiao, "The number of floors we complete in the 100-story tower will directly affect the evaluation level when we join the association later." She looked astonished and said, "A tower climbing competition?" Tamin looked at the system window and replied, "That's right. The higher the number of floors cleared, the higher the final rank you'll receive. Of course, if all of us conquer the same number of floors, the final rank will be determined by the time taken to climb the tower and the difficulty of the challenges faced." The more Kui Jiao listened, the more nervous she felt. So she said, "Even the time taken to climb the tower is counted as an evaluation criterion for the challenge? So what should we do now?" He happily explained in detail to the other party. "That's right. We can be one step ahead of others. Those ceremonies are actually the heaven-piercing tower's way of testing our observation and adaptability. If we wait in order for the ceremony to end before going to read the instructions, we'll only fall behind others by one step. What they want to see is the challenger's ability to observe the environment, find solutions, and seize the initiative." A few seconds later, Su Min looked at the three of them and asked directly, "Are you planning to keep teaming up with me to climb the tower, just like we did in the novice dungeon?" Yinqing answered sincerely, "Of course. Following you, Su Min, makes us feel very safe. The heaven-piercing tower token has restrictions, so even if my family wanted to spend money to hire someone to help, they couldn't." Meanwhile, Yinze pondered for a moment before hesitantly speaking up. "Su Min, this time, Su Min immediately looked at him with displeasure. Yinze avoided Su Min's gaze and said frankly, "I won't be joining your team again." Yinqing cried out in surprise, "Why?" With an extremely confident expression, he began to analyze the situation. "In the novice dungeon, Su Min was practically the main force when we killed the hidden boss. We merely followed behind and benefited, yet we still reached such high levels. We relied too heavily on Su Min's strength. With your abilities, you'll definitely pursue even greater challenges. I don't want to hold you back. I also want to rely on my own strength to train and become stronger." After hearing him out, Gui Jiao immediately supported him. "Yinze is right. We also need a real trial of our own to ensure our chances in this challenge. The three of us should form a team without Su Min and take it on together." Yinqing looked surprised and responded with a single word, "Huh." At the same time, Yinze agreed with her. "I agree." Gui Jiao then asked Yinqing, "Yinqing, will you join us?" Yinqing looked troubled and hesitated. It took her a while to think it through before she finally shouted confidently, "All right, I agree. I need to learn to rely on my own abilities and become stronger too." Gui Jiao immediately declared, "Then it's decided. Su Min will challenge the tower alone." After the three of them formed a team, she told him, "Su Min, choose the solo tower climbing challenge." A few seconds later, Gui Jiao stood up and announced loudly, "As for us, we'll form a 3-person team and challenge the tower." Their conversation was inadvertently overheard by Li Chengwang nearby. He muttered softly, "So that's how it is." At that moment, Li Chengwang thought to himself, "Su Min, our battle between 10-star talents has yet to determine a winner. A moment later, the system sent a notification. Team selection complete. The 100th-floor tower challenge begins. Upon receiving the notification, Su-min happily said first, "I'll be going ahead. Everyone, do your best and achieve good results." Gui Jiao cheered him on enthusiastically. "Go, Su-min." Yanze hurriedly added, "We'll do our best too." As planned, Su-min ventured in alone. Before he even reached his position, the system immediately announced, "Challenger Su-min, number 001, is the first person to enter the 100th-floor tower challenge." He stood there for a moment, observing the situation, then thought to himself, "This feeling is so familiar." The next second, the system announced, "First-floor challenge opponent, Furious One." Upon receiving the notification, Su-min calmly thought, "This will be as easy as turning my hand over." But to his surprise, his opponent was a rooster. Seeing his opponent, Su-min cried out in disbelief, "Huh." On the other side, his opponent was called the Blue Plains Running Chicken. Su-min stared at it and wondered inwardly, "Why is this challenge different from my previous life?" He carefully observed his opponent, first looking at its legs, then at its head in search of a weakness. Su-min saw that the rooster's comb was exceptionally beautiful and bright. A few moments later, Su-min easily grabbed the Blue Plains Running Chicken by the neck. As it squawked in panic, Su-min stammered, "Why is the first-floor monster a chicken?" Just like that, he recalled his past life and thought, "I remember that in my previous life, the first-floor monster I encountered when challenging this place was a level 5 monster named the Purple-Furred Ferocious Tiger. The challenge is completely different from my previous life now. Could the 100th-floor tower be looking down on me as some clueless amateur?" Su-min was puzzled because he could not see the Blue Plains Running Chicken's level. He muttered, "This chicken's level is a question mark? Strange. What does that mean? I can only finish this quickly." Just as Su-min was about to attack, it struggled free and flew away, making him cry out in surprise. One surprise followed another. The Blue Plains Running Chicken turned around and attacked him. With just one kick, it sent Su-min flying backward. Caught off guard, he was unable to counterattack immediately. After regaining his footing, Su-min stared at it and thought, "This chicken." The previously weak Blue Plains Running Chicken now stood before him with imposing majesty. Its eyes filled with sharp ferocity as it looked at Su-min. The Blue Plains Running Chicken charged at him again, forcing Su-min to admit inwardly, "This isn't simple." Elsewhere, everyone simultaneously heard the announcement. The introductory ceremony for this generation's 100th-floor tower challenge has concluded. Next is the introduction to this session's traditional 100th-floor tower challenge. After looking at the notice board, someone said anxiously, "It's on the board." The display showed, first place, challenger number 002. After seeing it, Gui Jiao immediately said, "The rankings and the number of floors cleared have already appeared on the leaderboard." Han Ran hurriedly added, "Someone has already begun climbing the tower?" Shui Zhu found it unbelievable. "How is that possible?" The explanation just ended. Then the board displayed, first place, number 002, Li Chengwang, has cleared floor 2. Discussions immediately erupted. First place is that 10-star genius from Wuyang City, the Mad Saber, Li Chengwang. Inside the tower, Su-min swiftly summoned his sword and launched a continuous barrage of attacks at the Blue Plains Running Chicken. It stubbornly refused to lose and kept evading Su-min's strikes. Furthermore, the Blue Plains Running Chicken used a pecking attack. Fortunately, Su-min successfully dodged it. Su-min activated his stealth step skill and thought to himself, "This skill's attack speed is as fast as a bullet." With that thought, he quickly accelerated his movements before slashing at it. However, the Blue Plains Running Chicken swiftly shot into the air. As Su-min leaped up after it, he thought, "Its explosive power is incredible too." After landing, the Blue Plains Running Chicken made a scratching motion. Whenever Su-min attacked, it chose to fly upward, moving as fast as lightning. A few moments later, the Blue Plains Running Chicken counterattacked with its chicken flight, dog run combo. It no longer feared him and decided to fight Su-min head-on. After fighting for a while, Su-min realized something. These attacks are too fierce. My currently practical skills, draw slash and sword control, aren't effective in this situation. At that point, he successfully struck the Blue Plains Running Chicken once. As it retreated, Su-min thought, "I need to find a breakthrough. If this drags on, the battle will only take longer. The time advantage I had when entering the challenge tower will be completely wasted." He suddenly thought of Li Chengwang and made up his mind. Then I can try the new skill I obtained after defeating the hidden boss in the novice dungeon. The Blue Plains running chicken stood still, observing its opponent. At that moment, Su Min suddenly moved with abnormal speed and closed in on it in an instant. He swung his sword, forcing the Blue Plains running chicken to curl up in midair. In the end, it still landed safely without being injured. Su Min did not lose heart and continued searching for a solution. At that precise moment, he thought, "You have to land eventually." A few seconds later, lightning suddenly appeared beneath the Blue Plains running chicken's feet. Next, Su Min unleashed Sword Tomb to attack it. Sword Tomb, sword technique, giant sword burial. Descends and shakes the earth. Effect: summons a giant sword to explode from the ground at the designated target location, dealing tremendous damage. Unable to see the Blue Plains running chicken, Su Min shouted, "I got it!" But only a second later, he blurted out in astonishment, "Huh?" The Blue Plains running chicken was safely flying in midair. Su Min stared at it incredulously. It didn't hit. Unable to defeat it after fighting for so long, Su Min angrily roared, "Damn it, this isn't over yet." It looked like an ordinary chicken, but its strength was nothing like that of a typical first-floor opponent. However, Su Min soon noticed something strange. Wait, he looked at the Blue Plains running chicken and asked himself, "Is this really an ordinary chicken?" Su Min stared intently at it and discovered that another identity was hidden within it. Not wanting to waste time, the Blue Plains running chicken resumed fighting Su Min. This time, it took the initiative. Su Min hurriedly used two skills in succession, marking and chicken immobilization, to fight it. Though they caused no damage, Su Min had grasped the truth. Just as I thought. Fortunately, it's merely the instant he found its weakness, he thrust his sword through the Blue Plains running chicken and said, "An ordinary chicken." The system then provided an explanation. Interesting fact. Chicken immobilization refers to a chicken's tonic immobility response, an instinctive defensive behavior caused by stress. When a chicken is turned onto its back and its head is held in a fixed position, for example, forced to stare along a straight line, its sense of touch sends signals to the brain indicating that it cannot escape. The brain then temporarily suppresses motor nerves, causing the chicken to become completely motionless. In this state, the chicken remains conscious, though its heart rate and breathing slow down. This may deceive predators that attack only living creatures, allowing it an opportunity to escape. Once turned back to its normal position or after the threat disappears, it becomes active again within seconds to minutes. It took a moment before the system finally confirmed, "Congratulations, you have successfully cleared the first stage." Su Min looked at the system window and thought, "A chicken stronger than the initial stage's usual opponent. This isn't a test of my strength, but of my intelligence. The 100-floor tower in this life is truly interesting." He looked at the 100-floor tower rankings and murmured inwardly, "Li Chengwang is currently in first place. So that guy came here too." When the rankings displayed second place, number 002, Li Chengwang, Su Min grew slightly concerned. "Other challengers have started climbing the tower too. It seems I've lost my time advantage." In the blink of an eye, Su Min's attitude changed, and he said happily, "Very good." He continued onward, a positive thought rising in his heart. It had ignited his fighting spirit. "In this tower climbing speed contest, I will definitely win." Time continued to pass as the system issued notifications one after another. All rules have been fully explained. Finally, the method for entering the 100-floor tower challenge is to return to the venue, where the designated seats on both sides serve as self-registration points for challengers. The host, Dian Dian, suddenly appeared on the screen and said, "There is no time to lose. Challengers, please take your challenge seats." Following her announcement came the dissatisfaction of many people. Li Fei was the first to complain. "Damn, so it starts that simply?" Zhang Xiong said unhappily, "Isn't this a trap? After such a long, boring opening ceremony, we still have to listen obediently until the end." Chao Shi was unhappy too. "We were completely fooled by the opening ceremony. Hurry up and find a seat." Xiao hurriedly went to claim a seat, saying, "In a competition, every second counts." Having found a seat, Xiao Mei complained, "We could clearly have entered the tower through the seats from start." Yang Yi could not help grumbling as well. No wonder that Mad Saber, Li Chengwang, already appeared on the rankings. Xiao Mei muttered to her friend, "How did he know?" Just then, Fong Hu shouted in panic, "Everyone, look at the tower climbing rankings." The leaderboard now displayed. First place, number 002, Li Chengwang. Floors cleared, 6. After seeing it, Yujun could not help but exclaim, Li Chengwang has already cleared 6 floors? Another new entry appeared on the leaderboard, a challenge team. The rankings continued to change. First place, number 002, Li Chengwang. Floors cleared, 6. Second place, numbers 003, 004, and 005. Team leader Gue Jiao. Floors cleared, 4. Yujun froze in place when he saw this. So many people realized that those seats were connected to the entry area. Another new number appeared. It was number 001, the first challenger to enter. The surprises did not stop there. The person in third place was then displayed on the notice board. Third place, 001, Godslayer. As soon as the words appeared, Gao Shan became so flustered that he could barely speak. But when the leaderboard displayed, third place, number 001, Godslayer. Floors cleared, 1. Everyone began discussing it. Is Godslayer a title? Back with Su Min. After successfully clearing the floor, the system sent a notification. Reward for successfully clearing the first floor. Choose your own title. Su Min stared blankly at the notification. Choose my own title. Then he entered the second floor space, still wondering, what use does a title have? After thinking for a while, Su Min suddenly recalled his previous life. I clearly remember that in this life, after killing the first floor gatekeeping monster, the reward was supposed to be a small wooden chest containing something like a healing potion. But a title? At that moment, the system forced him to enter his desired title. Su Min followed the system's instructions and thought, it feels like many things have changed in this life. Is it because I was reborn? The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. No choice then. A decision formed in Su Min's heart. In that case, I'll make the most of it. He quickly operated the system window. A few seconds later, Su Min muttered inwardly, I'll use the profession from my previous life as my title. Just like that, he chose the title Godslayer, and the system accepted it. Title content accepted. Challenger number 001, Su Min. The screen displayed, 100th floor tower challenger, Godslayer. After checking the status window, Su Min was puzzled. The title replaces my name? A while later, the system displayed, gatekeeping boss, flying vampire bat. Seeing this, Su Min said with satisfaction, that suits me perfectly. Very soon, a level 3 flying vampire bat appeared. The moment it appeared, it looked extremely fierce. However, the flying vampire bat was swiftly defeated by Su Min's chainsword technique. After he defeated it, the rankings changed again. Third place, number 001, Godslayer. Floors cleared, 2. After seeing it, Yujun said in confusion, only a minute has passed, and that Godslayer has already cleared 2 floors. Su Min then continued to the 3rd floor and defeated the level 5 giant demon assassin. With his principle of ending battles swiftly, he killed the giant demon assassin with just one move. The system confirmed that he had cleared the 3rd floor. Su Min advanced to the 4th floor and engaged in a fierce battle with a level 6 three-eyed grass beast. As before, he killed it with ease. Gao Shan praised him loudly. That's incredible. Yujun, standing beside him, also exclaimed, that Godslayer's tower climbing speed is so fast. The rankings began to change. Second place, number 003, 004, and 005. Team leader Gue Jiao. Floors cleared, 5. Third place, number 001, Godslayer. Floors cleared, 4. Everyone began whispering again. He has cleared 2 floors in less than 10 minutes. He's catching up to second place already. But Li Chengwang in first place isn't willing to be outdone either. He has already broken through to the 8th floor. The rankings changed again. First place, number 002, Li Chengwang. Floors cleared, 8. Back with Su Min, he was enthusiastically clearing floors when he thought, that Mad Saber has already cleared 8 floors. He smiled with interest. An interesting pace. To catch up with his opponent, Su Min began calculating inwardly. I wasted far too much time on the 1st floor. Consider it a head start for you. From now on, I'll charge forward at full speed. Su Min was now in challenger number 001's 5th floor space. The level 7 three-headed river dog was the boss here. Not want to waste any more time, he took the initiative and attacked first. I can't wait for you to walk out of that gate. In an instant, blood sprayed from the three-headed river dog. Elsewhere, Gue Jiao's team successfully defeated the boss on the next floor, and the system confirmed. Gue Jiao's team has successfully cleared floor 6. Gue Jiao happily declared, that was close, but we cleared another floor. My summoned creature will take the lead. Yin Zhe, you're responsible for dealing maximum damage. Yin Qing, you'll handle crowd control and healing. Our teamwork is getting better and better. At that moment, Yin Qing suddenly called out, "Hey look!" Gui Jiao and Yin Zhe hurriedly turned toward her. Yin Qing stood before the leaderboard and told them, "Sumin, he climbed the tower in such a short time. His ranking has already surpassed ours." Just as she said, the leaderboard displayed, Rank 2, Challenger number 01, Godslayer, 7 floors cleared. Rank 3, Challengers number 03, number 04, and number 05, Captain Kui Jiao's team, 6 floors cleared. Meanwhile, Li Tram Quang was doing no worse. Having successfully defeated another boss, the system immediately confirmed that he had cleared the 9th floor. Li Tram Quang smugly thought, so the monsters on the 9th floor are finally somewhat threatening? Even so, there's still no challenge for me. Next is the 10th floor. According to the rules, whoever clears the first 10 floors will receive an additional reward. Judging from the leaderboard, the person climbing so quickly under the name Godslayer must be Tamin, the Royal Swordmaster. Though I have no idea why it took him so long to clear the first floor after entering the tower. But even if he starts catching up now, he cannot be faster than me. The extra reward for clearing the 10th floor is mine. Just as he was feeling proud, Li Tram Quang noticed the leaderboard change and cried out in shock. What? He froze completely in place. The leaderboard now showed Rank 1, Challenger number 02, Li Tram Quang, 9 floors cleared. Rank 2, Challenger no 01, Godslayer, 9 floors cleared. Rank 3, Challengers number 03, number 04, and number 05, Captain Kui Jiao's team, 7 floors cleared. Tamin successfully advanced into Challenger Space number 01, floor 10. A level 15 Minotaur was the boss here. Rage. Even now, Tamin held the upper hand and had inflicted considerable damage upon it. Seeing the furious Minotaur covered in wounds, Tamin sneered. "What is it? You are already unable to hold on?" Then he stopped attacking, turned around, and walked away. "You only lasted 30 seconds? After lying in the hospital for some time, Li Tram Quang finally woke up. As he slowly opened his eyes, he heard an unfamiliar voice. It took Nurse to Hong a moment to notice that Li Tram Quang had opened his eyes. "You are awake?" He then rushed to the arena and shouted, "Revenge! My level definitely cannot keep up with Tamin's anymore." The moment he came up with an idea, he shouted, "I have it!" He pressed send and made up his mind. A while later, Li Tram Quang left, still thinking about what the nurses had told him. He only needed to sit down to activate the tower climbing system. Since Tamin was using an alias, Li Tram Quang could only wonder, who is this Godslayer in first place? Tamin was fighting the boss with all his strength to clear the floor. The boss of this floor was a level 20 crystal burrowing beast, and it was desperately resisting. A few seconds later, the level 20 crystal burrowing beast attempted to attack from behind, but Tamin quickly noticed it. He avoided its attack and gritted his teeth as he stared at his opponent. With his current level, he was indeed beginning to struggle. The monster's main body was buried underground, with only an extremely hard purple crystal exposed atop its head. From beneath the earth, it continually released small monsters onto the surface to attack. Those troublesome little monsters also possessed defenses as tough as purple crystal. In the end, he decided to change weapons. If I rely only on my previous silver grade weapon, breaking their defenses will not be easy. Fortunately, the additional golden grade weapon reward for being the first to clear the first 10 floors. Tamin opened the All Things Ascension chest and whispered to himself. Using his All Things Ascension talent, he upgraded the golden grade weapon into a platinum grade weapon. A few seconds later, Tamin took out the obsidian silver Ren twin blade, but it also sacrifices some speed. It will not be convenient against large numbers of enemies. Tamin charged into battle, thinking, although my attack power has weakened, with my primordial sword body talent. Having achieved what he wanted, Tamin happily thought, this will let me have both speed and offense. Forced onto the defensive, he was battered for some time before collapsing to the ground from exhaustion. Li Tram Quang glared resentfully at the boss and gritted his teeth. At that moment, he noticed something strange and shouted, "I have reached my limit." On top of that, my level has fallen behind. Most irritating of all, I have not received any useful reward that boosts my attributes after clearing a floor. Deep down, Li Tram-Kwang also admitted that because he had lost the tower climbing race against the Min, he had no choice but to accept an ordinary silver reward. Li Tram-Kwang was sent flying some distance by the demonic giant tree. I cannot force myself to continue. Li Tram-Kwang hurriedly operated the status window. A moment later, the system promptly announced. Meanwhile, Tamin was still wholeheartedly battling the level 20 crystal burrowing beast. When he finally managed to injure it, he smiled smugly. Once close enough, he immediately activated Sword Grave. Tamin casually struck the level 20 crystal burrowing beast, though it was not enough to end the battle. You cowardly turtle! Team number 53 stopped at floor 14. Rank 2, challenger number 02, Li Tram-Kwang, stopped at floor 17. My HP is still full. His speed and skills had improved by several levels, and his eyes were full of confidence as he eagerly anticipated the battle on the next floor. The boss of floor 20 appeared. The boss was a level 25 Gatekeeper Knight. The moment it saw him, it took the initiative and attacked first. The Gatekeeper Knight attacked Tamin continuously and at incredible speed. With his sharp eyes, Tamin successfully blocked its strikes. Knowing that his opponent would not be easy to handle, he tightened his grip on his swords. Then he used Shadow Step to move behind the Gatekeeper Knight. Tamin intended to launch a surprise attack, but the Knight detected him. After fighting for a while, he realized this guy blocks my attacks far too easily. A second later, it suddenly opened its eyes and stared at him. The sword in the Gatekeeper Knight's hand abruptly began to glow. With a single kick, it successfully sent Tamin flying backward. Moreover, the skill it used afterward caused him immense alarm. Tamin barely managed to block the Gatekeeper Knight's attack. As he felt his opponent's power, he thought, the power of this superclass monster skill is too great. Seeing that his HP had dropped considerably, Tamin tensely thought, with my current attributes and equipment, I simply cannot block its offensive skill. Each attack takes away 1/3 of my health. At most, I can withstand one more strike. Sure enough, even as someone reincarnated, I cannot challenge the 100-floor tower of the Heavenly Tower Association across such a huge level gap. But I had expected this. He resolutely thought, choosing to keep climbing the tower is also a test. Only then can I use that level 20 skill, the skill I was proudest of in my previous life. This slash of his was enough to threaten the Gatekeeper Knight. As soon as he arrived, he heard everyone discussing it. It looks like you lost to Godslayer. Tamin blurted out, if even Godslayer's single slash cannot deal with you, then I can only admit defeat. No sooner said than done, he quickly operated the system window. A second later, the system responded. As soon as he finished speaking, the Gatekeeper Knight suddenly said, you didn't lose. Startled, Tamin answered with an incredulous, huh. The Knight then explained seriously, at your current level, your attributes are still far from sufficient. That is why you were unable to bring out that skill's true power. Tamin stared at him, wondering to himself, how can this guy speak? The Gatekeeper Knight then cheerfully left him with a parting remark. I'll look forward to your challenge in the future. Scene change. The system sent Tamin back to the rest area. As soon as he arrived, he felt somewhat disappointed. So I'm back. This familiar scene must be the rest area after completing the 100-floor tower challenge. The next second, someone shouted, everyone look, the rankings have been updated. Everyone rushed toward the ranking board. Little Zhou spoke first. That Godslayer guy failed his challenge too. Dutuan quickly confirmed it. That's right. He stopped at the 19th floor, but that's already incredibly impressive. Someone else agreed. Exactly. Even Li Tram-Kwang, that genius berserk swordsman, only dared to challenge up to the 16th floor. Curious about Godslayer's identity, Chao Sun asked, just who is this Godslayer? Lan Hong said anxiously. Then doesn't that mean he has already teleported back? Dutuan immediately replied, most likely. Go ask around and find out where he is now. He looked at the results displayed on the ranking board. The screen displayed F rank, E rank, D rank. Tamin was puzzled. What? There are only 3 ranks, F, E, and D, for monster slaying missions right now. After comparing the locations, he decided, then this is my only choice. Tamin casually selected D17, and the system provided the details. You have entered the illusory realm. Before the day of descent, the real world had originally been a place where humanity lived. But after the day of descent arrived, All kinds of inexplicable phenomena, dungeons, demonic creatures, and monsters appeared one after another throughout the real world. From then on, humanity began merging into the world of the awakened. Thanks to the sacrifices and efforts of those who came before them, order was gradually established within the chaotic real world after the Day of Descent. The illusory realm was created as a separate zone from the human world, leaving space for monsters and strange beasts to live. That was what led to the relatively peaceful atmosphere of the world today. The 100-Floor Towers trials were also the gateway that opened the illusory realm's adventures to newly awakened people. It was said that the top of the 100-Floor Tower held the truth behind everything connected to the Day of Descent. Unfortunately, in my previous life, I was unable to reach it. But in this life, I am fortunate enough to start over. I will accomplish the goals I failed to achieve before. A few minutes later, the system issued a prompt. Without hesitation, Tamin made his decision. No, I want to return to the real world first. The system accepted his request. The sword god class in this life will belong to me. My first weapon advancement order. Scene change. Real world weapon trading center. Tamin took out a sword. This sword was called the Black Iron Blood-Sucking Sword. Holding it in his hand, he pondered for a moment. It is no longer enough to deal with the difficulty of future challenges. However, the weapon's effects are extremely useful to me, and I cannot bear to give it up. Hearing that, Tamin hesitated. The weapon center? That's right, but I'm not going there to... Suddenly, the signal cut out. Guizhao an Xioli site. Hello. Tamin, can you hear me? If you do not want to come, I can buy it for you. He selected Basement Level 2, Warehouse 9S as his destination. Tamin stood outside the door for a moment before entering. He heard footsteps, and Nahura called out loudly, "You're late." He reluctantly answered, "Ah." She wiped away her sweat with a towel and asked directly, "Tamin, have you paid the remaining balance?" After confirming that he had paid, Nahura handed over the item, and the system confirmed. The system provided further information. The next second, the system responded. Tamin thought to himself, "We did know each other in my previous life." But outwardly, he merely answered, "I was just joking." Then Tamin secretly glanced at Nahura and recalled events from his past life. In that life, Nahura had been an exceptionally skilled weapon blacksmith. Although she only possessed an 8-star talent, her passion and dedication to weapon forging eventually led her to remarkable achievements. I worked with her many times, and she helped forge many specialized weapons just for me. Of course, those partnerships in my previous life cost a tremendous amount of money. Now, 20,000 Descent coins are truly only a small investment for a great return. Therefore, I need to start preparing early while she is still at her poorest. Then he said seriously to Nahura, "Not only do I know your contact information, I also know that you are worried about lacking the funds to buy materials for your next weapon research and development project." Tamin confirmed, "I do." Nahura immediately praised him. "Are you an angel?" The condition was not difficult, so Nahura immediately agreed. "Of course, no problem at all." A few seconds later, it looked terrified after hearing a deafening roar. It turned around, only to see that massive creature seize the little dragon with its tongue. Terrified, it cried and screamed frantically. A while later, Tamin arrived at Green Slaughtering River Forest. He looked around and muttered, "No wonder this is the illusory realm. The trees here are far larger than those in the beginner dungeon." Tamin caught a strange scent in the air and thought to himself, besides the smell of grass and trees, there's also a faint scent of blood mixed in. The target should be nearby. Then he lowered his head to look at the map, while the system provided detailed information. D17, Serpent King Extermination. Location, southern region of Green Slaughtering River Forest. Coordinates, deep within the forest. Objective, hunt a second-class Serpent King in the wilderness forest of the southern region. It has devoured several Heavenly Tower Association members. Its strength is terrifying, and its current level is approximately 25. Please proceed with extreme caution. Rewards, 10,000 Descent coins and 1 random platinum skill scroll. But the trees here are too tall. Climbing them will not be as easy as it was in the beginner dungeon. Still, there is one method I can try. After all, I am not a true Royal Sword Master, but I do possess the Royal Sword skill. If I can learn to ride a sword through the air like a genuine Royal Sword Master, that would be incredibly impressive. Why not give it a try? Thus, he decided to ride his sword rather than travel on foot. However, Tamin failed at sword riding and fell flat onto the ground. Lying there, he said in disappointment, "As expected, it does not work. It seems sword flight is an exclusive ability of true royal sword masters." The moment he finished speaking, the sword suddenly moved, catching Tamin off guard. It did not obey his control, and in his panic, he accidentally shouted. A second later, Tamin figured it out. So that is how it works. Although I cannot stand on it and fly, if I hold the weapon tightly and use royal sword to designate a target, I can activate the skill repeatedly. Having understood the Blackwind blood-sucking sword, he used royal sword again. This time, without falling, Tamin told himself, "This can help me." Scene change. After flying as high as he could, he thought excitedly, "I'm flying from above." Tamin looked over the scenery and said, "The view from up here is truly beautiful. I can see it now." Based on his judgment, he headed south. Something is happening in the south. Scene change. At the same time, another group arrived. As soon as she got there, Chu Yuyan loudly asked, "How is it?" Black Tiger manipulated the status window as he replied, "This is Monster Slaying Mission D-17, no mistake." Looking at the D-17 area displayed in the status window, he said firmly, "Most monster slaying missions are completed by teams. Only that guy accepted one without joining any party. That means we can easily locate his name through the target search function. He should be within range, Tamin." His profile appeared in the status window, along with the words, "Can be invited to team." Upon seeing it, she said with interest, "He dared to take on a monster-slaying mission alone. That guy has some guts." Ki laughed loudly and continued, "He is just a reckless beginner. I do not think we even need to hunt him down. Sooner or later, he will die during the monster-slaying mission." With a confident expression, Black Tiger urged everyone, "Then we need to move faster, so he does not die too early and cost us the chance to claim his bounty." At that moment, the system confirmed. That is why I did not achieve the results I wanted during this tower assault. The 100-floor tower's evaluation of me must have dropped as well. There are not many challengers remaining. It seems most of them have already moved on to the next stage, monster-slaying missions. I have fallen behind in the trial's progress too. Tamin's results are not displayed inside the 100-floor tower, and he is not on the ranking board in this rest area either. What is going on? Did he withdraw from the trial? I cannot find any trace of him. Even if I find a suitable assassin, I will not be able to act at the right moment. As Truong Duong stood before the ranking board, Kui Jiao's group returned, leaving him extremely surprised. After arriving, Neum Trake happily praised her. "Kui Jiao, fortunately we had your command. Otherwise, we would never have successfully challenged the 15th floor." She honestly told Neum Trake, "I contacted Damin. He accepted an extermination mission and has already set out." She had not expected Damin to make such a decision, so she asked Kui Jiao directly, "He wants to complete the extermination mission alone?" Kui Jiao looked troubled and reluctantly replied, "It seems so. He has always been independent." Unwilling to fall too far behind Damin, Vanton urged everyone, "Then the three of us should keep forming a team. We cannot lag too far behind Damin." After hearing their entire conversation, he took out his phone and thought, so there's a lead after all. He actually dared to go there alone? It must be some low-level extermination mission. Truong Duong hurriedly sent a message. Search for this year's Heavenly Tower Association Tournament invitation. Target selection, individual challenge, extermination mission. Find him and kill him. The scene shifted to Tamin arriving at an old, ruined building. Current location, D-17 Extermination Mission, Southern District. Tamin looked at the ruined building before him and thought, "This place appears to have been devastated a long time ago." As he approached, he made a new discovery. Tamin saw human corpses and silently speculated, "These are probably the villagers' bodies." After thinking for a moment, he said, "This is a beast folk village." To investigate the cause of death, Tamin stepped closer and examined them. The corrosive fluid on their bodies was probably the cause of death. This foul stench is likely snake venom. That proves my extermination target is nearby. The smell of blood mingled with other pungent odors deeper inside. Tamin intended to venture further in, but as he was thinking, he saw a swarm of flies gathering over a pile of dung ahead. The overwhelming stench made Tamin cover his nose. So this is where the smell is coming from. No wonder it is so strong. Looking at the dung, a thought came to him. The target must be getting closer. But this thing is huge. Just how large is that Serpent King? Then Tamin accidentally heard a sound nearby. With a puzzled grunt, he flew over on his sword and said, "What is hiding behind that tree?" After seeing the person hiding nearby, Tamin was somewhat surprised. She was a catfolk named Leah. Upon seeing him, she panicked and cried out hesitantly, "Don't come any closer. My claws are very sharp." Seeing how frightened Liao was, Tamin did not say anything more. Since she posed no threat, he turned away and said, "So it is just a pet." Even more enraged, she shouted, "I am not a pet." Liao was a level 3 demon folk. Since it was her first time seeing a stranger, she was extremely nervous and stammered, "Why you came here to attack our village too? Don't come closer." The system then provided Leah's information. Race, catfolk level, 3 experience value, 300 class, assassin strength, 9 constitution, 9 agility, 27 spirit, 9 luck, 9 talent, catfolk agility. Innately increases agility attribute effectiveness by 1.5 times compared to ordinary classes. Skills, silent step, claw strike. When Leah saw Tamin approach, she tensed up and said, "Don't come closer. Don't come closer." He took something out and handed it to her. "Leah, take this." Leah looked at it and let out a confused cry. Seeing that she did not dare drink it, Tamin promptly explained, "It is a health potion. You are injured." Leah stared at him blankly. Tamin turned his face away and reassured her, "Do not worry. I did not come to attack your village. Besides, there is nothing left of your village to attack. My target is the Serpent King that attacked this place." Afraid that he would be in danger, Leah quickly warned him, "But that giant serpent is very dangerous. If you go alone," Tamin opened his status window and quietly said, "No need to worry. This is my mission." After hearing this, Leah grew so nervous that she began to sweat. Then she suddenly said, "I can find that serpent's lair." Tamin glanced at Leah. Lowering her head, she said resolutely, "Please take me with you." When she looked up again, Leah tearfully explained, "That thing ate my entire family." The scene shifted. Tamin agreed to take her along. On the way, he asked, "It is getting darker, but there is no sign of anything. Are you sure this is the right direction?" Leah confidently answered, "It is right ahead." After walking a little farther, Tamin said loudly, "I do not see anything." Leah took a few steps forward, pointed upward, and said, "Up there." Tamin followed where she pointed and asked in surprise, "Up there?" As the mist thinned, Tamin became extremely tense when he saw the venomous giant python coiled high in a tree. Looking at the python, Tamin thought, "It is huge, far bigger than I expected. A D-rank mission truly cannot be underestimated. I need to rethink my attack plan." At that moment, Leah heard a sound and turned toward it. When she spotted a figure in the tree, she quickly warned him, "Watch out behind you." Thanks to Leah's warning, Tamin narrowly avoided the enemy's attack. Seeing this, someone angrily said, "How could he detect us from that distance?" Black Tiger immediately suggested, "Since we have been exposed, let us just kill him." Tamin furiously shouted, "Who fired that arrow?" Their group swiftly jumped down from the trees. Black Tiger was the first to speak. "You have some skill. A newly awakened person at level 20 can actually evade our attack. But just because you got lucky once does not mean you'll be lucky again. You're going to die here today." Then Tam Ki fired an arrow at Tamin, while Chu Yuyan launched a flame attack. Black Tiger drew his sword and said, "Attack together. Kill him and complete the bounty." All 3 of them launched a coordinated barrage of attacks. Claimed a reward. Tamin successfully evaded their repeated attacks with his sharp observation. Seeing his ability, Chu Yuyan became excited. "You can dodge physical attacks, but can you dodge my magic?" Tamin then successfully dispelled Chu Yuyan's spell. A loud explosion immediately rang out as the spell was broken. Moreover, the previous attack had also depleted a small portion of Tamin's HP. Before he could regain his footing, Black Tiger rushed at him with his sword again. But in the end, he still missed. Immediately afterward, Tamin retaliated with the Whirlwind Bloodslaying Sword. Black Tiger blocked the strike and arrogantly said, "Is that all?" Tam Ki casually remarked, "They had to hire all 3 of us just to deal with him?" Chu Yin said excitedly, "This really is easy money. I thought anyone daring to challenge a D-rank extermination mission alone would be formidable. Turns out he is just an ignorant rookie who picked a mission at random." Black Tiger loudly mocked Tamin's abilities. "With strength like that, you dare cause trouble outside? You truly do not know the meaning of fear." Underestimating Tamin, he added, "We wasted so much time tracking you. Consider this a lesson before you die." Meanwhile, Lia hid in a corner in fear. After hearing this, Tamin pretended to be exhausted and asked loudly, "Before I die, can you tell me who sent you to take my life? At least let me die knowing the truth." Black Tiger raised his sword and proudly replied, "Since you are about to die, there is no harm in telling you. It was the young master of the Truong family. Truong Duong wants your miserable life." As he spoke, he slashed directly at Tamin. Liao was so frightened that she nearly burst into tears. But a second later, she looked utterly confused by what happened next. Tamin, who had just been injured, suddenly recovered. He then flew into the air and said, "So it was Truong Duong, just as I expected." Black Tiger could not believe his eyes and cried out in shock. Tamin quickly added, "The only person who could attack me like this is him." Staring at Tamin, without a single wound on his body, Black Tiger stammered, "How can there be two of you?" Tamin activated Insight, Eye, and replied, "That was only my equipment swap doppelganger skill." Using this skill, Tamin clearly saw each of their levels. Chu Yin asked in confusion, "Equipment swap doppelganger?" Black Tiger shouted, "We were fooled by him." Ignoring them, Tamin thought, "A level 23 archer and a level 25 female mage." In the world of the awakened, where the strong preyed upon the weak, hunting one another was commonplace. However, to preserve the basic balance of survival among the awakened, relevant laws and regulations have been established. Battles between awakened could not involve a level difference of more than 10 levels. Anyone who broke that rule would be wanted by the world. Therefore, their levels could not exceed level 30. That intermediate swordsman at level 27 was the highest level among them. In that case, I will start with the lowest level one. Tamin decided to attack Tam Ki, the level 23 archer. He flew several circles above their heads to distract them. Once they became disoriented, Tamin suddenly closed in on Tam Ki. Black Tiger immediately shouted in alarm. Before he could finish, Tamin cut him off. "Do not panic. Strikes on vital areas do not count against the HP bar." Chu Yin could do nothing and cursed, "You despicable coward." Tamin thrust his sword into Tam Ki's throat and replied, "The throat is one of the vital points. You were the ones who ambushed and plotted against me first. Who is more despicable is obvious." Black Tiger's face darkened as he stubbornly retorted, "You are just a newly awakened brat, and now you are taking a hostage? Have you ever killed anyone before? Killing someone for the first time does not feel good." Tamin ignored Black Tiger and continued with his plan. In the end, he sent Tam Ki to his death before Black Tiger's stunned eyes. Afterward, Tamin deliberately said, "I am in quite a good mood." Tamin's actions had been so swift that Chu Yuyin was terrified. She stammered, "This guy." Black Tiger glared at him and said, "He did not even blink." Chu Yuyin could not believe her eyes. He had killed so easily. Tamin laughed confidently. "Since you were sent to kill me, your levels cannot exceed level 30. In a world of the awakened, your levels are not much different from that of a newly awakened person. Just because you have taken a few bounty hunting missions, do you really think you are professional assassins?" His words left the two of them speechless. Then Tamin laughed excitedly. "Unfortunately for you, the souls that died beneath my blade in my previous life were countless." At that moment, Liao could only hide behind the bushes and watch fearfully. Immediately afterward, Tamin charged Chu Yuyin. His movements were swift and decisive, and before she could react, she was wounded. Seeing blood spray out, Chu Yuyin screamed wildly. As Tamin fought Black Tiger, he said, "The hand is not a lethal vital area. Check your HP. You are a mage. Even if your opponent is higher level, they still cannot avoid my attacks at my speed." Wanting to avenge his companion, Black Tiger used Circular Blade Heavy Strike. Tamin quickly stepped back and thought, "Although he is a strength-focused swordsman, he is 7 levels above me. His agility and speed attributes are nearly equal to mine." Tamin activated Shadow Step and suddenly attacked Black Tiger from behind. However, Black Tiger was sharp-eyed enough to counter the attack. Black Tiger knocked Tamin backward and said, "Are you scratching an itch for me?" Hearing that, Tamin suddenly had an idea. The attribute gap caused by our level difference has significantly reduced the damage my attacks deal to him. The rules of the awakened world calculated life and death battles between awakened differently from battles against monsters. Although the HP bar still mattered, it only applied to damage dealt to ordinary body parts. Another way to swiftly defeat an opponent was to attack their lethal weak points. Attacking a weak point greatly increased damage and had a high chance of ignoring HP calculations entirely, killing the target in a single strike. However, when facing a higher-level opponent, the chance of landing a critical hit on a vital area was greatly reduced. At that moment, Chu Yuyan clutched her wound and cried out, "It hurts so much." Black Tiger immediately reassured her, "Stop shouting. Once we receive the reward for this mission, I will find a high-level healer to treat your hand." Looking at the two of them, Tamin thought, this is precisely why level and attributes are so important in the world of the Awakened. Black Tiger then asked Chu Yuyan, "Can you still fight?" She cursed in pain, "Damn it, it hurts like hell. Hurry up and finish him." Tamin silently acknowledged, "I am the lower level one facing stronger opponents. This will be a battle of attrition." Tamin suddenly came up with an idea. Wait, he looked toward the venomous giant python and thought, "I have it. I can borrow a knife to kill someone." Tamin swiftly headed toward the python. Seeing him turn and leave, both of them were confused. Black Tiger then gritted his teeth and shouted, "That bastard is trying to escape. I am a heavy class fighter. I cannot keep up with him. Can you use magic to lock onto him?" Chu Yuyan agreed. Of course. Even if I lose an arm, I will still kill him." She activated a locking skill and shouted, "Try my ultimate move." The next second, Chu Yuyan fired a Fate Ice Arrow straight at Tamin. The moment he noticed the Fate Ice Arrow, Tamin activated the power of the Whirlwind Bloodslaying Sword. He decided to use Royal Sword Flight again to move faster. Seeing this, Chu Yuyan angrily shouted, "That bastard has flown up again." Black Tiger replied irritably, "He is a Royal Sword Master. What is strange about him flying with a sword? Use more skills and bring him down." Seeing Tamin fly toward the venomous giant python, Liao was shocked. At the same time, she admired him. "He is amazing." Tamin stabbed his sword into a thick branch. A few seconds later, he looked behind him and thought, "Follow me." When he saw the Fate Ice Arrow follow him there, Tamin thought with satisfaction, "That is more like it." He drove his sword into the branch beneath the venomous giant python and muttered, "Target." Tamin activated Inside Eye. His target was the sleeping venomous giant python. "That is the one." After a while, Black Tiger asked, "Chu Yuyan, did you hit him?" Confident in her abilities, she answered, "No problem. It is my magic locking skill." As soon as she finished speaking, both of them heard a strange cry and froze in fear. Chu Yuyan asked first, "What was that sound?" Sweating nervously, Black Tiger replied, "It sounds like something." The moment he saw the creature clearly, he was too frightened to finish his sentence. The venomous giant python quickly rushed toward them. Black Tiger panicked and shouted, "The extermination target." The system promptly provided its information. Having been marked as its enemy, Chu Yuyan's face turned pale in fear. Seconds later, the venomous giant python sprayed corrosive venom directly at her. Chu Yuyan hurriedly fled and cried, "Why is this thing only chasing us? Can it not spare a disabled person?" Sitting on a high branch and enjoying the show, Tamin recalled that he was the one who had awakened it. Of course, but it was her skill that struck the boss first. If it does not chase her, who else would it chase? Still, he could not help thinking, a mage truly is formidable. With just one attack, she took away 1/5 of the boss's HP. As Tamin watched the show, he thought, she is actually helping a lot with eliminating the enemy. Below, Black Tiger swung his sword and shouted, "Heavy strike." He then used Tremor Cleave, striking the venomous giant python squarely in the back. The creature howled in pain after being hit. Seizing the advantage, Black Tiger used Heavy Slash, causing blood to spurt continuously from the venomous giant python. He followed with a killing blow and shouted, "Die." To finish it off completely, Black Tiger added another seismic heavy strike. Tamin watched him for a moment and thought, as expected of a heavy weapon warrior who prioritizes strength. When he attacks at full force, his power is truly formidable, and he is one level above this giant serpent. Using this method to exhaust them both was the right choice. Next, I will finish them off. Seeing the venomous giant python covered in wounds, Chu Yuyan said joyfully, "We are saved." As soon as she finished speaking, Tamin's voice suddenly sounded behind her. "Do not celebrate too soon." With that, Tamin used Chain Sword, wounding Chu Yuyan. 7 strikes. Then he said, "You still have me to deal with, Black Tiger." Hearing her cry, he immediately turned around and shouted, "Damn it!" It was Black Tiger's turn to launch a surprise attack. At the same time, the venomous giant python used its self-healing skill. Its wounds gradually healed in an instant. Tamin smiled with interest. "Need any help?" Black Tiger trembled in fear and cursed, "Bastard." Tamin was not angry. He merely replied softly, "I think you understand the situation now." Then Tamin summoned the whirlwind blood-slaying sword and said, "A sneak attack is really unpleasant, isn't it?" Seeing that the venomous giant python had little HP left, he thanked them. "Thanks to your help, this giant snake only has 1/3 of its health remaining. Moreover, the hard scales covering its body have been blasted away by that attack, greatly weakening its defenses. What a lucky find. I searched everywhere, yet found it so easily." Upon hearing Tamin's words, Black Tiger realized he had fallen into the enemy's trap. He gritted his teeth in fury. Before he could finish, pain shot through his body, making him scream. Black Tiger suffered because Tamin used Royal Sword Flight to send his sword through both him and the venomous giant python at once. Tamin sneered, "That was effortless." At that moment, Leah's vision was obscured by thick dust. When the dust finally settled, her face filled with astonishment. Seeing the venomous giant python lying motionless, Leah said joyfully, "We did it." The next second, Tamin looked at the status window and said calmly, "Reward, 0." Meanwhile, she looked at him and thought to herself, this person. Having avenged her clan, Liao was so happy that she nearly cried. He really helped me take revenge. But that was not all. An uninvited guest spoke up. "The reward for this D-rank extermination mission must be quite good, right?" Tamin looked upward and asked seriously, "Who's there?" Standing atop a high tree branch, the other man deliberately answered evasively, "You shouldn't be concerned about who I am right now. What you should care about is yourself." Tamin was completely baffled. It was Trong Duong. As Tamin's body suddenly began trembling, the man said lightly, without realizing it, "You fell into my trap." Tamin tried to stop himself from shaking, but he could not. Worried, he thought, "I can't control my body. I am paralyzed." When was I hit? I already dealt with those assassins. I wasn't struck by the giant snake's attacks, either. It couldn't have been snake venom. How could he attack me without physical contact? Once he confirmed that Tamin had completely lost his ability to resist, Trong Duong summoned his sword and approached. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind it. You only saw the immediate gain and failed to notice the danger behind you. I never expected such good fortune. I thought no one would take the D-17 extermination mission today. He suddenly thought, perhaps he is another assassin type awakened. Trong Duong continued, "I never expected to happen upon you people fighting here. If I don't take you as my spoils of war, it would seem rather unreasonable." Tamin asked him directly, "So you aren't one of the assassins sent to kill me?" Trong Duong quickly denied it. "Assassins sent to kill you? Are you joking? A level 21 awakened like you is worth spending a fortune to hire assassins for." Not believing him, Tamin used the insight eye and thought, "I knew it. Trong Duong couldn't possibly have been clever enough to know those assassins could not defeat me, then hire more people." Before attacking, Trong Duong deliberately said, "One strike without pain. My critical slash skill will cut you into pieces." The system provided additional information. Hearing this, he nervously stammered, "Why you? How did you find out?"